You're unmuted.
Thank you. Everybody else set? I'd like to call this meeting to order, Benzie County Board of Commissioners. Today is November 26, 2024. Roll call, please.
Cunningham,
Present.
Janat,
Here.
Markey,
Here.
Nye,
Here.
Roloff,
Here.
Sauer,
Here.
Worsakki.
Here.
Everybody's here.
Please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity to serve the citizens of Benzie County. But ask for your guidance with the decisions we'll make today. Please keep all of our public safety personnel safe and free from harm. Ask in the name of your son. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. There is one item. Oh, not one item. Approval of the agenda, please.
Is there a change or no?
No.
No.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Mark, will support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Approval and or correction of the minutes from November 12th, 2024.
Just one correction, you probably caught it, was debate. First line, it says Tuesday, November 24th. 12th, correct?
Yes, what's the 12?
That's all I had.
Okay,
With that, I'll make the motion to accept the minutes as presented.
9 seconds.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? So moved. Brings us to our first public input. Anybody like to share on your public inputs this morning? Close public input. Move to elected officials and department heads. Tom King?
Morning, Tom King, Director of Benzie County EMS. I will be relatively brief. I'm going to introduce Chris Parrish. Chris just wants to say a couple words here really briefly. And overall, EMS moving forward wants to have a little more visual presence. So from time to time, we'll have someone from our department that will come and say a few words and answer any questions that anybody may have. That.
Thank you. Chris?
Good morning. Thanks for having us. I do appreciate being able to watch the video of this presentation. I've watched it, I don't know, so probably a year now. And I've been in public service for about 16 years. And I've seen a lot of boards and on so forth. And this one is particularly professional and you respect each other. And I've really appreciated as a resident to be able to watch that. Some of which I find really, really boring and I can advance through. But I really appreciate that. And I appreciate that window, which kind of prompted some of this idea that maybe we need to, as Benzie EMS, need to communicate a little better. It's tricky because most of the communication that we might do, we can't tell you about because it's private. So I am going to talk about a call and we do have permission from that individual. But I'm going to leave out this descriptive data to make it complete, to be fair to everyone and to be consistent with HIPAA law. So, just a little bit about where we are and where we're going. So we run just under 3,000 calls a year. About 80% of those are ALS or advanced life support. About 80% of those are 911 calls. And of all of the services in the greater Tri-County area, that is more 911 calls than virtually anybody else runs. MMR through their different divisions might outdo us a little bit, but that would be different counties as well. So we do a lot and we have long transport time. Downstate, when we go to conferences and so forth, we're dealing with with agencies that literally have more than 2 level 1 trauma centers within 5 minutes of every call. Our nearest level 1 trauma center is Grand Rapids. We have a level 2, which is Munson, which does a pretty good job, especially for a level 2, being the only one in the reasonable area. And our average transport time is around 40 minutes. Worse than that all the way on the other side of Frankfurt, and better than that in inland. But you know, those are long transport times. And that gives us some opportunities as providers, and some responsibility as providers. When you have 5 minutes to get to the hospital, you can kind of load and go. And yes, there's lots you can do to help people. But here, we routinely reach the end of our protocols. Protocols determine what it is that we're allowed by medical direction to do independently of the hospital in the back of the ambulance to help make your life better or save it under some circumstances. We have to go through those procedures regularly. So it's harder, but the opportunity is kind of greater too. And this story and a couple other things are going to integrate back to that. Just for the record, we run 100 to 150,000 miles a year on our trucks. We pretty much have that down. We've got a template of sort of the truck that we want, because we need one like every 2 years. You may have noticed, you're always approving that.
Thinking of MMR.
Yeah. Our neighbors. So that's about what we run for miles.
Did you plan that to happen?
Yes, Bob, I did.
Thank you.
So we have that pretty much down. We have pretty good equipment too. There's nothing that I need in the back of that truck that I really want that we don't have. And we appreciate that. You guys, I remember during COVID, we asked for PAPRs, and we were a little nervous about that. And we were like, okay, well, we need like 6 for sure, but 4 would do it. You guys approved 9, just like that. And we really appreciated that. That was a hard time. It hurt. It was hard for everybody. It was hard for us too. So anyway, so that's where we're at. And I want to tell you a little bit about a call, and it reflects one of the reasons that I choose to work at Benzie EMS. This call went out really, really well for a difficult situation. And a lot of that is pure luck, but a lot of it's not. So that this individual called dispatch, and their family witnessed them have a cardiac arrest. The dispatch situation did exactly what they were supposed to do with the new EQA questions. Things we have priority dispatch now, which includes, most importantly, some questions that they ask and some guidance that they provide people. Well, that went off perfectly. And I know that for 2 reasons. Because when we got there, the family member that was doing CPR told me they were told to do CPR. And they were doing it well. This is great. So they called 911, witnessed arrest, almost immediate bystander CPR. These are metrics used by the American Heart Association to determine likely positive outcome. Okay, so that happened. We were en route in less than 2 minutes. We were on scene in less than 3 minutes. That does mean that we were relatively close. Then the next thing that happened is we had a first responder agency, and I'm going to leave the fire department blank. Again, we're going to try to keep this countywide. The first fire department responder joined us on scene. Immediately, we continued the CPR, and we got our own CPR going, and then we started using a device called a Lucas 2, which, besides not getting tired out, it does a better job than we do rotating, and we can do other things while it's working. We got that established. The fire department first responder was there. Then we had 2 deputies show up, and they responded to the whole county. So I can tell you it was Joel and Mitch. And like always, and I work in Grand Traverse as well, and Grand Traverse is good for cops, but our cops, police officers, they want to do whatever they can to help, and they rush there, and they'll do whatever you want them to do. And sure enough, these 2 guys, and it was Matt Delzio and myself. Matt's a little bit newer, but excellent paramedic. I'm the little bit older paramedic. We work extremely well together, and we also like to utilize all the resources. So we find jobs for everybody. And that helps us make sure that we get everything done as fast and as good as possible. So we immediately placed an ET tube, an advanced airway, started a large bore IV, started giving the medication, and we delivered the first defibrillation shock. And that was probably less than 2 minutes getting on scene. But most importantly, it was less than 11 minutes from onset of cardiac arrest. That's a little bit suspected because we weren't there, but we did that. Then we had some more fire department people show up again, helpful. And we began working the patient. Okay, so we delivered several shocks, and the underlying cause of what causes the cardiac arrest, depending on what that is, we can help it. Okay, if it's something too serious, we can animate the system, but we can't bring the person's back. But if you don't deprive the brain of oxygenated blood, because you pump it manually and you oxygenate it manually, well, all the lights will continue to be on. And we were very optimistic. Anyway, we worked for about 30 minutes, maybe a little less, about the time that we were thinking, okay, it's time. The individual was a little older, but they were doing great before. So we're calling the hospital. We got something we call ROS, return of spontaneous circulation. We got pulses back. And that was, I have seen that before, my 16 years, but not this call goes on. So we've got that back. Okay, now we lose it again. And we get it back again. Okay, we're going to go to the hospital. There's a possibility we're going to make this work. Well, 10 defibrillations, at least 11 rounds of epinephrine, multiple drug loadings. And we worked her all the way to the hospital. And by the time we got to the trauma room, she had spontaneous circulation. We're still breathing for her, but that's because we tubed her and sedated her after we did that. But yeah, she's alive. And it did turn out that patient did pass away. But it was the next day. The family got to spend time. They had some choices, and it call went perfectly. Everybody did a really good job. The dispatch center did exactly what they should do. We did exactly what we should do. The first responder fire department did exactly what they should do. The police officers did exactly what they should do, which is even more than, because a lot of times they don't help. They may be there, but the level of help we get from the sheriff's department is significant. And we should, and on every call. And we had a pretty favorable outcome. And, you know, the chief of the ER, that physician shook our hand, said we did a great job. And it kind of helps some of the hard calls go better when we do that. This system that you have either built or been part of building is excellent. And you should be proud of that. That call as it happened, I'm not going to say that it could not happen in the Tri-County area, but I've never seen it happen in the Tri-County area. There are assets out there that are better than ours. That means but that was great. We did a really good job. You guys built that system with Benzie EMS, with our system of a relatively small millage, which passed really well. Thank you. And that's the system we built. And you're a big part of that. And I think that you should be proud of your system and your responders. So that's the first element. A little bit about where we're going and a little bit of why we're here. We work employees. That's probably our first challenge we have right now. We have 3 openings. We've got 2 promising candidates that we're trying to land. But to be frank with you, it's very difficult with the job market right now to get excellent provider. That's what we're looking for. An individual that says, I want to be part of that team. I want to do my very best. I want to learn as much as I can, and I want to do as much. Well, everybody wants that person, by the way. And so they're hard to find, or hard to get, hard to keep. So we're working on that. And that's probably a little bit of a challenge we have. We have to think about another station here pretty soon. That's also a challenge. And I think that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions for me. That's okay. That's green light. But if
Chris,
you don't,
thank you. on behalf of the board, we appreciate all of everything you said. It makes a big difference knowing that what we're doing is helping not just you, but other entities in the county. Much appreciated.
Tom, question for you if I could.
Go ahead.
I'm directing this to Tom. It was just, Chris just mentioned about another station. Is there a thought about where that would be?
Sorry, Tom.
Lots of thoughts about where we may like to
Same.
put that station.
We
There's,
have a lot of thoughts.
it's kind of like, way in the beginning stages. I
Yeah.
mean, this kind of goes back to when we were talking about put a station down here where the old bank was with dispatch and gone from there, dispatch to their thing. So now we're trying to, determine what are the best needs eventually sooner than later. I mean, just not tomorrow, not next year, but soon we're gonna have to consider putting 3 cars on 24 hours a day. We want 2 cars, then we run a day car. So staffing obviously isn't always going to be an issue, so that thought process isn't gonna come up until we know we can even generate the staffing to put on more full-time people.
Right.
And then as well as where do we have a 3rd station? So there, Katie and I have had a few different conversations. Everything's kind of just in talk phases.
Okay.
So I probably kind of didn't answer the question, but that's the best I got at the moment.
This is just brainstorming at the moment.
Exactly.
Okay. And do I understand, you're the communication director now? Did I hear that right?
I'm an IC, I'm an instructor coordinator. We have several coordinators that sort of assist Tom in some semi-managerial roles where I review a little over half of all the reports through Benzie EMS. And our goals there is to make sure that we maximize our cost recovery. Okay, that's billing from insurance companies, et cetera.
Sure.
And then eliminate liability and make sure that our performance standards are met.
Okay.
So
Now
that's what I'm a line employee.
you seem like the right personality for it, but Tom, you want to increase the amount of communication that you're getting to the county commissioners? I mean, there's the obvious reason, but is there any underlying reasons why you're looking to step up the level of communication?
I mean, part of it's me. I've said, coming from another board more often, their job, like many of the different positions we have with the county, it's pretty intricate. It's pretty unknown by the vast majority of the folks around this table. And so just trying to encourage that open dialogue, that communication, that education for you who are sitting around here. So as you're speaking with your constituents, you can more confidently speak about the operations that we're providing to the county.
Okay, great.
Anybody else?
Yeah, this is a question for either of you two. Statistically, once CPR is started throughout the state or nationally, what's the likelihood of outcome of getting the person to have their heart rate back on their own? You guys have that answer?
There are statistics will say almost whatever you want, but the truth is poor. But there are the matrices. First off, was it a witnessed arrest? Was there bystander CPR? Time to first defibrillation are astronomical. If you can't score high ratings on the first few of those, your chances of a favorable outcome are virtually 0. That is a decimal point before a number goes in. Now, if you're like, heaven forbid, if it happened here, we'd have a lot of resources. We would notice right away. We'd get bystander CPR. We'd get an AED going. We'd get an ambulance going. The chances are great. Again, it depends why they had it. I
didn't ask.
Long, sorry.
I didn't ask for a why. I asked statistically.
It's very low. It depends on a couple of those.
He said 4.
Anybody else? Thank you both again.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Appreciate it. Doug Duran?
Good morning, Doug Duran from Benzie Senior Resources. Very few times, I've never upstaged, but what a great presentation. I don't know if I can top that, so no. You got my report, some updates. Snow removal program is, as the weather talks, more people get anxious, so we're over 90 right now signed up, and I'm sure once the first snowfall comes, in the next 24, 36 hours, we'll be bombarded come Monday morning.
Careful
or
what you say
prior
there.
to. I know.
Morning and they all are like, we don't watch the weather. There's no snow. And I'm like, but
So, yeah,
Bite your tongue.
so other than that, it's kind of status quo as usual. We're just seem to be experiencing, I've been with Benzie Senior Resources going on 12 years, but we really had a hard time with deaths and clients going into other institutionalized settings in the last 6 to 8 weeks. So we're kind of struggling to maintain a good workload of folks, of my staff to be up to their hours. And that's kind of sad to have that happen. A lot of long-term folks that we're losing, and you just develop their relationships with them, and my staff is struggling, so I got to look at that as well to get them some good talk through and stuff like that. But, ebbs and flows, but wow, this has been a crazy time for the last 6 to 8 weeks. So
How many plow drivers for those 90 plow drivers?
we have 6 contractors, same as last year, and they handled, I know it was, a mild winter, but we had over 177 clients, and it was manageable with them. So I feel confident that we can do that. Yeah.
I have a question. You're talking about losing your clients and how it affects on your staff. Do you guys have any like counseling available for your staff?
We rely on a hospice agency that comes in with their folks to do that, to give my staff an opportunity to express sorrow and talk things out. So it might be time again to have that person come out to a staff meeting.
And speaking of like people moving on to different institutions, how's the replacement search going?
Well, me moving on to institution. So yesterday was the last day that applications, resumes were accepted. As of last Wednesday, they had 47 applicants, and they were hoping to go over the 50 threshold. They had 17 that were exciting, and then they were sending out another 4 questionnaire questions to the 17, and we'll start to base their decision on that. In the meantime, Kelly will be the interim director, and I'm spending the whole month of December with her stuff. I may be on call, if needed. So, but anyways, I have a lot of vested interests in Benzie Senior Resources, and again, I'll just kind of piggyback. You guys have been very supportive of Benzie Senior Resources, and so as a community, as a whole as well. So yeah.
Very good. Any other questions?
So this is the last meeting you'll be attending here.
No, you'll see me one more time in December. I think we have the annual review, the first Tuesday, I think it's the 10th, I believe.
oh yeah, 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be there with that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And over the last year to 2 years, you've been talking about this volunteer program for home visits. People would just sit there and be available. Did that ever get off the ground?
Not through us, but we have increased our participation with the Senior Companion Program. They got some, volunteers. In fact, they got a couple of volunteers from our Home Deliver Meals program to do that. So, so we've taken the most needy of that and looked at that. Space wise, staffing wise, get that off the ground is a little difficult, but that's still a long-term range goal that so I like to leave the new director to continue to look at that as a friendly visitor program type thing.
Well, for life longevity as well as mental wellness, I think that's based on everything I'm reading. I think that's an important program. And when you were talking about people coming out of the system, going into nursing homes as an example, do you have any program that follows them for visits into the nursing home, or is that done once they're?
It's done because they have activities department, they have a social service department and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And they have their own volunteer programs and long-term cares as well. Yeah, right. You guys have a great Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
John?
Oh. Part of these probably did not make it into your packet, but I was coming for a letter of support later and I said, hey, these are ready,
Thank
so why don't we talk about it?
It's okay.
So I'm John Troop, Executive Director of the Benzie Conservation District. Like we did last year, I won't be too long-winded, but I'll point you to a few different places in our annual report. First and foremost, thanks for having me. We are wrapping up our 80th year as the Benzie Conservation District. And I just want to say it's a real honor and a privilege to get to serve you and serve this incredible county who really cares about their natural resources. It's really outstanding. It's been so fulfilling. I'm coming up on 2 years. 80 years ago, we started like other districts in response to the Dust Bowl. And so fortunately, we're not still talking about, those challenges, but on the very first page, our strategic direction, we send it's called a conservation needs assessment to all Benzie County residents and visitors to ask them, what are the issues they care about? How do they use our natural resources? What are they concerned about? What would they like us to do about it? And so I just want you as commissioners to think about us, the Benzie Conservation District, as a really close partner for any natural resources issue that you may be wrestling with. And just know that we're listening very closely to our community and designing our programs and our staffing and everything to meet our community's needs and desires. So that first page summarizes our strategic direction. We want to live in a future where education inspires the protection of natural resources for a better tomorrow, where water is recognized as a vital part of life in Benzie County, and where land is celebrated and protected by all. And so we're not going to get there in 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. These are long-range goals, but these are how we are measuring our program success. We're holding ourselves accountable to these goals, and everything we do is in service to those goals. Likewise, we're a small staff, a little bit less than 6 full-time equivalent staff members now. And so everything we do is also designed to empower our community to take the lead in protecting our natural resources. Whether that's providing advice, technical resources for, our Board of Commissioners or a local township, or an individual landowner to make better decisions, or identifying and seeking grant funding, you name it. Everything we do to be successful, to have any shot at getting towards these goals, we have to design our programs to elevate other folks and empower other folks to protect our natural resources. Page 4, 5, and 6 talks a lot about our water quality work with a summary of just a few quick snapshot numbers on page 6. This type of work, water quality, comes up as a number 1 concern for our community and our county every time we send a survey like this. So we're doing the research, the water quality monitoring, getting folks together so that we can make the best decisions about how we spend our time and resources in protecting our water quality. I'm going to skip over the financial report now, and then you can see our incredible grantors, sponsors, volunteers, donors, and a little, blurb and envelope in case you want to support our work. If you're inclined, I encourage you to do so. We can't do this work alone, and so we really appreciate our community members leaning into this work. Pages 12, 13, 14, 15 talks about our auxiliary staff. So these are state or federal employees that often work through our office. And again, they're doing the same things we are, providing technical resources, advice, or money to individuals or groups to implement conservation practices. So page 12, the bottom there talks about, this year alone, we have $316,809 some odd dollars obligated. That's supporting farmers and producers in Benzie County to continue their operations and implement more conservation, more sustainability practices. Incredible program that supports our local residents. Likewise, 14 and 15, our district forester supporting individuals making better decisions about their trees. And then finally, 16 and 17, this is really close to home for me. Our work in education is so important. What a joy it is to work with our young folks and old folks to teach them about our natural resources, environmental science, and what's going on in the land and in the water in Benzie County. The bottom of page 17, we hosted events with over 1,400 attendees across this past year. We supported the public with over 490 public inquiries. So that's, people calling the phone or stopping in our office with a jar of green stuff saying, what is this? Or I've got this plant that's going crazy in my backyard. Can you come help us? We're here as a resource. You can pick up the phone and we will respond. And that's a free service that's really supported by our millage funding. So again, thanks to the county commissioners for continuing to support our operating millage. It's small like others, but it enables us to provide that service to our community. So it's really wonderful. With that said, it's been a really phenomenal year. I'm going to turn back to the finances really quick. But that said, we've lost a few of the grant sources that have been standard for us. So this conservation district is a leader in the state in the prevention of aquatic invasive species. That started in partnership with the county and the Michigan Invasive Species Grant Program through the state. Since its inception, though, the state has, in my opinion, not kept pace with inflation and the dollars that we have as an entire state to address invasive species. And you may know we have hemlock woolly adelgid in Benzie County, which is an invasive insect that attacks our hemlock trees. So to make short of the story, the state is funneling a lot of funding to hemlock woolly adelgid, rightfully so. What's being left by the wayside are our aquatic invasive species. There's just simply not enough funding in the state's dollars. So again, we have a small portion of our millage that supports our ability to have at least a staff person that can coordinate efforts of lake associations and private citizens across the county. But it's not enough. And likewise, we've had a couple other grant sources, and this is what happens with state and federal grants is they change priorities, change staff, things, new opportunities emerge. And so we've lost a couple opportunities. And that's why you see in our financial report, this on the income side, donations are increasing. We are being more vocal about who we are, what we do, and the value we provide to this community and what it takes to make this happen. And so we're going to the community asking for funding and they're responding. It's really wonderful to see the support when we ask. And so we hope that amount continues to increase, that donation slice, but overall the financial picture is very healthy. We have a small but wonderful surplus in our budget this year and things are looking good for the future. With that, I'll open it for questions.
Okay. Got my attention with the farming thing and the amount of money. I can see the 2 or 3 items you have listed here. Is that a direct payment to the farmers to do these things or how is this working?
It is. So the way NRCS works is they create their own payment schedules. And I could talk a long time about how they do this.
I can
and
read
how
something on that. Now, wait a minute.
Yeah, and how that system's not perfect. I've experienced that firsthand. But they'll say, okay, NRCS pays this amount of dollars per acre for cover cropping, for example. That goes directly to the farmer. If they have the skill, expertise, time, and equipment to do that themselves, that goes directly to them. If they choose they want to pay a contractor for that, they make that decision themselves.
So is that they apply for these?
That's right. Yep, it's a grant.
No, I don't want to. I'm just. He's looking at my neighbors here, so.
Yep.
Just curious.
And
how
it's a federal grant, so it's complicated.
Okay.
It's a long process, but that's also where we come in to help. We can help with the application process. Our NRCS staff help every step of the way get through this really, bureaucratic federal government process, but it is.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Question, John. First, I want to say I really appreciate communication and education and what you're doing with that. On your financial report, the donations, you have $80,000. Is that mostly from Benzie citizens or tourists involved with that, or do they have opportunity?
That's a great question. It is primarily residents. I didn't crunch the numbers. I will say, I know that we do have a significant portion of donors that are part-time residents, so they're full.
Okay.
Their legal residence may be Chicago or
Sure.
St. Louis. We have a lot of folks from St. Louis. I don't know this theme. But
I've lived
primarily
there, I know
residents, you know, and this list is growing organically for us. And so it's folks who show up to our meetings. It's folks who have been a customer in the past. that
Yeah,
we're-
I
we're
was
building
wondering
relationships.
because of tourism here, if there's opportunity for that somehow, maybe just planting a seed for
Mhm.
that information.
Absolutely. They're already a strong contingent of our donors and will continue to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate it.
What else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. And for folks, there are extra annual reports in the back of the room. If you would like any. I've got a few extra here.
Thank you.
So I just want to quickly stand up and introduce a couple new staff that we have here in Benzie County. As you know, Rose has moved on, and so yesterday started our new employee in our office, Stephanie. Stephanie, stand up. I won't try to say her last name because I butchered it yesterday. And now, there you go. Stephanie is here with the county now. She'll be in our office and day 2, and she's already hitting the ground running. And then also with the budget, you approved an internal IT person, and we went through a long interview process. And Michael Drager, who many of you know, is our new internal IT person. And again, hitting the ground running yesterday, and we're so thankful to have both of them here.
Welcome
Oh.
aboard, both of you.
Okay. Very.
Any other elected official department heads? Cory?
Should be last.
Hold it here.
Hmm.
Oh.
Good morning, Corey Ellis, 911 Director. My update's much shorter. I just haven't been up here in a little while, so I kind of wanted to be in front of you all, answer any questions you might have, and kind of give an update of what we're doing and where we're going. So probably the most important thing that we're trying to work on is actively recruiting. Much like Benzie EMS talked about, the job market is very difficult right now. Everybody wants the best, and so really the ball is in the employees' court. They can decide where they go. So we are working on that. We're trying to recruit for our emergency communication specialist positions, which are our dispatchers, and also our deputy director position, for obvious reasons that were just talked about. Some of the other things we're working on, some of the major projects, that we are wrapping up. If you remember about 1 year ago, December-ish of last year, I believe, we moved forward with a different secondary notification system is what we call it. Information to responders to put in their hands. We identified some limitations in our current system. We made a decision to go a different direction. We are wrapping that up now, and it has come to fruition exactly as we had planned it for the end. There were some challenges along the way, but we made it there. And so now every fire and EMS first responder has all CAD information in their hands on their phone. It's a pretty big improvement. I can talk about this for quite a while, but I'll keep it short. That's a very big improvement. Another thing we're working on is, that I've talked about before, has to do with radio encryption. I'm not gonna bore you on that, but, we are making progress on that. We've identified approximately 100 radios that we're going to have to touch in some fashion, whether it be upgrades, replacement, et cetera. We're still working on that. Again, it's just in conversation phase, data collection, trying to figure out the right route and what we're going to do with that. Another pretty big improvement that we're working on is to have the Michigan State Police in our CAD system. And also in return, they will see our CAD information. So that's going to be a great improvement, especially as the state police continue to rebuild and introduce community, no, that's not what they called it, resident troopers. So we're starting to see more of a presence in Benzie County again with state police. And so getting them in our system is going to be a great improvement for them. We have finally completed, we have a backup laptop that has full CAD capabilities on it. And so now we have 2 of the 3 elements that we need to have a dispatch center anywhere in the country, really, but anywhere in the county. We have that capability. So the third one is the radios, and we're working on it, but we have 2 of the 3 now. So that's a pretty big achievement for us. We're continuing to be out in the community. Most recently, we've had people down at the Frankfurt schools, talking with the kids. We've also been at the Elmira Township, the fire department's Halloween event. So we are still out there, trying to just raise awareness of what 911 is, what our profession is, the services we provide, but also just talking with kids and teaching them about using 911. Since January 1st of 2024, so kind of this calendar year, we have completed as a department 507 training hours. So I felt like that was a pretty big number. And I felt like it was also important, as we do have continuing education. It's not just a one-time 6 months of on-the-job training and we never do any additional training. So in 11 months, we've had 507 hours. A lot of those hours had to do with priority dispatch. But that was also a very important system that we invested in, and we've had multiple examples, just like Chris was up here talking about. We've had multiple other examples also where this has paid off. So that's all I have as main updates, things we're working on and what we're doing, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have for me.
Just a couple of things. First, you talked about the update of the radios. It wasn't many years ago, we received a grant for about $650,000 that was managed through Elmira Township for upgrades of radios. What I've heard, in addition to your comment this morning, is this has to be a replacement system-wide.
No, so let me back up on that one. So that grant addressed fire EMS radios, and it was an assistance to firefighters grant. This project that we're talking about has to do only with law enforcement radios. But to answer maybe where your question might be going is, we are looking at grant opportunities and funding. I will be very honest that it's going to be a very big challenge to find any grant because the entire state has to do this.
Yeah.
So it's going to be extremely competitive. And as we know, rural counties sometimes don't fare the best for grant opportunities.
Well, I know the administrator has got some good resources, good connections that will help us if we need to. And this, I think I'm using the expression correctly, Smart 911. That falls under your purview, right?
Yes, sir.
Do we have many people in the community signed up on that?
It depends on how you look at it. Depends on the data you look at. So the last time I looked at it, we have roughly 900 profiles that have been created, which is their benchmark. That's what they call them, our profiles. When you look at the whole population, 900 out of roughly 17,000, that's not a great percentage. But when you look at the rest of the state, also we're right in line with other counties. But if you remember a while back, I don't remember exactly, I was up in front of you guys talking about it and saying we're going to make a push because we committed to a 3-year extension with them and we'll see where we are at. We have made that push and we are actively pushing it, trying to get more and more people signed up. It just isn't, we haven't seen it come to fruition yet. So we're still pushing it. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the same value that it used to when it came online. It used to be statewide. And more as I have discussions with other directors, they're dropping it out of their system because they have to pay for it and it's fairly expensive.
I would think that's a great tool for you guys.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it could be a life-saving event for the citizen.
Absolutely.
So anything we can do to get that message out there. This is not about government wanting to gather information. This is about us being able to react in a positive sense when we get that phone call.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I think sometimes people are like, I don't want government to have any more information than they have already given them. So they've got to be able to distinguish the difference.
Yep. I agree with you. And I would say to that point, Karen had asked the question when we were originally talking about, we can't see any of that information on the fly or other than on the fly. If you don't call 911 specifically, we can never access it. We have no way to get to it. You have to actually call 911 from the phone number that you registered with for us to see it. So we can't just go digging into it to find out what information you put in.
Right.
So there is a little bit of confidentiality with it.
And if I remember correctly, Corey, if you don't mind, it's not just medications and things like that. It's when the first responders enter my home, I can tell you about dogs I might have
Yes.
or pets that need to be restrained or just things to keep them safe coming to help me, right?
Yeah, you can, the sky is really the limit in this profile. You can put the description of your house, you can put where your water meter is, your gas meter, your propane tank, nearest hydrant. If you have a hidden key, you can put that in there. If you have a relative that lives with you that has chronic illness, you can put all of that information in there. The sky is really the limit on the profile. You can put as much as you want in there. You can even put pictures so that people can recognize when they respond who's who. So there is a lot of capabilities with it. Yes.
So I gather people asking him some of these questions. Why is that you haven't logged in and created a smart 911 account? I'm just
What makes you think that?
a challenge to everybody here, or maybe you should go in and do that. Just suggesting that.
Well, and
Well, how do you do that, Tim?
Smart911.com.
Yeah.
Smart911.com.
It's right at the very top of the page, quite literally that basic, smart911.com, and you click, it either says enroll or sign up.
Sign up and
Sign up.
sign in right in the corner.
And the process is a lot of information that's asked you, but it's not hard to do. It's pretty easy.
And it's not required. If you don't want to put it, you don't have to, and it'll continue on. It will show or collect as much as you want it to, or as little as you want it to.
Well, just an antidote. Just an antidote as to how it can work positively. One of the apartment complexes I owned required a key to get in, just to get into the access of the apartments. And I put a key down there at 911 or your central dispatch, and it was used more than one time for emergencies. So doors didn't have to get kicked in.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and I know this is different than Smart 911, but the cooperation between the two groups, not only did I not have property damage, but it was kind of transparent to the other tenants because everything was like, you're in, you're out, instead of making a lot of noise. So anything we can do to promote that, I certainly am in favor of it.
Good question. Thank you.
anybody else? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Any other department heads? So we're gonna back up and go to our 8:30. Mr. Taylor,
9:30.
9:30, sorry.
We knew what you meant.
You're on deck, Mr. Petoskey. Thank you.
Thank you. And good morning, everyone. So my name is Dick Taylor. I'm currently involved in the committee of the Friends called the Shoreline Protection System Committee, which is a committee of the Friends of Point Betsy Lighthouse. And as we have worked diligently over a number of years as a committee, we recognize that while it seems like we've kind of driven this bus, it's actually, we have suggested how to proceed. The Friends and the Friends have technically suggested that to you, and ultimately the decisions about what goes on out at Point Betsy are yours as the owners. In the past, our recommendations have seemed to make a lot of sense, and it's more or less been a rubber stamp as we've gotten this far. And at this point, there's some discussion about how to proceed, and so that's what I'm here for. So without going through a full review of where we are and how we got here, I'm happy to back up if anybody has a lot of questions at the end. The issue at hand is permitting, as we have worked for probably 5-ish years on designing a new seawall is the kind of generalization, but it encompasses more than that shoreline protection system. One of our caveats has been how we deal with the permitting agencies. And in addition to some minor ones, the main three that we have to deal with are SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, Army Corps, and Eagle. SHPO, of course, is interested in keeping things as they are, and that isn't really acceptable in that the vertical steel sheet pile wall that's out there is very reflective of wave energy, and that is no longer acceptable to the Army Corps. And so we have gone from you must do what we already have and found some middle ground in our designs. Obviously, our purpose is to provide as robust of a protection to the lighthouse that we can, given the dollars spent. And so there's been a trade-off of protection versus cost. Are we trying to plan to protect the place for 10 years, 20, 50? What's a reasonable relationship with the protected cost? And as we overlap these factors on Eagle now, we've kind of come up to a little bit of a bump in the road. Eagle has been very strict in their non-allowance of variances. And the Army Corps stricture of non-reflective wave energy means that they want a sloped approach to the lighthouse, a 2-to-1 slope, as opposed to that reflective steel sheet pile wall. So when you take all the geometry into it, if we were to provide a sloped protective revetment pile of rocks, if you will, in addition to the refurbishment of the steel sheet pile wall and a redo of the apron that protects the cap in front of the lighthouse, you take all those things out into the lake a little bit. Currently perpendicular to the steel sheet pile wall are some steel groins, they're called, walls that are spaced along the front of the lighthouse. Those are no longer the state of the art, and part of our plan has been to remove those. So we are already, we think, making the front, the view, the facade of the whole system less unattractive, removing those groins, which are no longer okay. The point of them was to interrupt the littoral drift of sand with the wave action to provide more protection over time. And again, that's not the state of the art. So this has been a little bit convoluted. Where we're getting at is that geometry suggests that we need to be out kind of into the area where the groins are now. And as we have looked at the different trade-offs, we've hoped that Eagle would be a little bit helpful in how far our new revetment would stick out into the lake. We have tweaked that a couple of times and pulled it back, and we're now to the point where our plan extends beyond their 15-foot allowance by all of 3 feet, and they won't allow that. And we as a committee find that to be unreasonable. In addition to being less of an infringement on the bottomlands, as they're called, less of an infringement than what the groins already are. It would be far more protective and robust, and we feel as though we have a very reasonable solution after a lot of money spent, a lot of time, several years in this planning. We've reached this point where CHIPO and the Army Corps have kind of gotten on board, and we'd hope to get 3-foot variance from. So that's not forthcoming. They have indicated that deadline, which is approaching for a decision, that they will not grant us that variance. And I will have to say that made the committee a little angry. We found some not nice terms to describe our concern with the Eagle folks. It just seemed like 3 feet, particularly given that the groins are so much farther out now, in order to protect this beloved icon. Ed told me this morning there was something on Ed Live, on M Live, about how gorgeous Point Betsy is and what a photographer's heaven it is, and 50,000 visitors, or et cetera. We can't have 3 feet of bottomlands. It just seemed ridiculous. So we were not happy about that and kind of dug in our feet and said, well, you know, in court, we could probably win. We could push these guys and say, hey, this 3-foot variance is absolutely reasonable. We'd certainly win in the court of public opinion. And so the initial response was, if they're not going to let us have this variance on their own, let's take it to mediation and fight them a little bit about it. I come to understand that they're not going to be very helpful anyway. The expectation is that they will dig in their feet and delay and be against it, and it'll be a big mess. So if that's the case, maybe it makes sense for us to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out something that's within their 15-foot allowance, not the 3 more feet that we need. And I guess that's where we're headed. I have been led to believe that Eagle will be not interested in giving us this variance. They can delay. They're fighting with state lawyers, not our lawyers, on our bill. So they can outlast us if, you know, they get a 90-day window in which they have to respond and they don't. 120 days, it's 180 days out. What are we going to do? We're just going to have to go and take them to court again. So that inefficient mess is something that we'd like to avoid. And it's also a function, our concerns are a function of dollars. I started the fundraising campaign in 2019 and got about $1.5 million in that initial process, which we'd hoped would be sufficient back then with our early estimates. Turned out that was way off the mark. Subsequently, as you probably remember, we got an over $5 million grant from the state of Michigan. That grant will expire as of, I don't remember if it's the end of October or the end of the calendar year of 26. So if Eagle drags their feet and we're in court with them for a long time, even if we eventually won, our grant would expire, and I would suspect it would be very difficult to replace that much money for in the future with private fundraising, et cetera. So I think that if we are dragged to the point in time through a legal process that our grant is gone, this whole project will basically fail. So I think we're at the point where we're going to have to abide by their Eagles guidelines and go back to the drawing board. We have a tentative meeting scheduled for next week with our engineering, marine engineering people to look at how that might work. And open to your input. I know there's some concerns on the part of the commissioners about any potential headbutting with Eagle. I understand the county has a lot of other things to do, Eagle, besides just Point Betsy, and no one wants to unnecessarily battle. So we as a committee, while frustrated, understand that it's not ultimately our decision, and are interested in your input and your questions. Surely you have some.
First.
I remember correctly, instead of granting a 3-foot variance was the solution, am I correct in remembering, was to move the actual lighthouse structure?
That has been discussed, and I think Eagle is arguably interested in that. That has been done in some places, and we have poked around a little bit on that possibility. I think it's an unrealistic idea. There's, first of all, no place really to move it to. If you remember from a plot of the land out there, there is some Coast Guard land inland. As we have tried to enroll the Coast Guard people in this process, they've been virtually non-communicative to get to the point where we had approvals from them, and, you know, we'd upset the critical dunes, and there would be a industrial disaster out at the beach anyway. To do all that it's not a simple thing, and it would take a long time, and the grant would be expired anyway. It just doesn't seem reasonable. Eagle has made it clear that they think that the lighthouse at some point will fall in the lake. And if you look at overviews, over time, there has absolutely been some erosion around there. And you know what? Maybe it will fall in the lake eventually. But in the same way that built, the Mackinac Bridge, the Empire State Building, nothing's permanent. But if, when they built the Mackinac Bridge, they decided X number of dollars to make it work for so long was worthwhile. Well, we're in the same position. We think X number of dollars to keep the lighthouse there for 50 or 100 years is very worthwhile. It's not Eagle's money anyway. So why they have a problem with that, I don't know. But yeah, no, the lighthouse isn't going to be there forever, but it can be there for another 100 or 200 years, and 50,000 visitors a year will be glad that it is. So the prospect of moving it has been discussed, though I thinks it's more realistic than it really is. It's just not practical.
So in between not granting a variance of 3 feet and moving the building, has Eagle offered any other options they would find satisfactory?
They would be clear and quick to tell us that that's not their job.
Yes.
Options for us. Their job is to protect the bottomlands, and 3 feet of sand underwater is their focus. And they aren't interested in giving an inch, and they don't care about our problems. They don't care about our finances. That's their job. And from a 2020 high water mark window, when I think they were very willing to grant variances and protect, causeways, and, everything was in a panic mode, and they were flexible. That pendulum has swung, and they no longer are.
And I really don't know, is when you get this determination from Eagle, is this an individual, or is this a board, or is it who is making this call?
Good question. My understanding is that there are some, there's a process, and there's some underling and, defamatory or whatever term. There's some lower level people that start the process, and I think ultimately it has to be reviewed and approved higher up. But how many people are involved in the exact structure of that, I'm not sure. But we have been notified by the powers that be that they're not intending to approve our 3-foot variance.
Yeah, someone takes it in, does the baseline review, then they make a recommendation to higher powers, who then make a recommendation to like an ultimate, like a board. And based on my interpretation and understanding of the meetings I've been to, that step one isn't willing to make any sort of
Right.
recommendation forward. And that's where we keep getting hung up, is that intake person per se.
So
And-
we've considered,
that's what I
I've considered going, how about I have a meeting, the head of, go down, let's have lunch, let's talk about, let's come on here.
Won't even do it.
That hasn't kept, whether or not it still can remains to be seen, but I think that it makes sense to plan otherwise.
Yeah, and I remember, Dick, when you presented before, there had been a shift in personnel, which is what you're
Right.
describing. So I was thinking very much the same, I think, as what Commissioner Nye is. Who do you talk to next
Right.
and have lunch with?
Well, we've had help, and contacted, Senator Bumstead. Art has spoken to somebody at a middle level at Eagle. The process of trying to go up to the ultimate decision maker, I think makes sense. I'm not optimistic that it's going to be successful while we still try. Hopefully, at least a phone call, if not an actual meeting, can happen, but it seems as though the line in the sand, if you will, has been drawn. Again, we'll continue to try, but in the meantime, the clock's ticking. And so our process is, we need to get a package to put out for an RFP. We did this a year-ish ago, last summer of 23, noting that we didn't have permits already granted. And that process is, the RFP package is detailed, 100 pages or more. And the review process by potential bidders entails a site visit and a whole presentation back from them. And that process takes a while. We will need some more money between the 6.5, we have about 6.5 million now. The one bid that we got as of end of last summer was in the 9.5 range. It was, I think, a fairly unprofessional bid. It was the only one that we got out of 8 or 10 potential site visitors, marine contracting companies that came out. We're hopeful that we'll get more bids next time around, because the backlog of demand that COVID kind of pushed everything back, and the delays from that, and similar to our funding, a lot of other got state funding. And so there was all of a sudden this big rush to do things. And so even if the marine contracting firms were interested in our project, they just didn't have the bandwidth for it. So we're hopeful a new RFP can go out and get some bids back. Even if the project is scaled back a bit, I don't think the price is going to be significantly lower than that. They still need to stage all their equipment. They still need to do the sheet pile driving. If they do 18,000 tons of rock rather than 20,000, yeah, maybe it's this much less expensive, but net, it's going to be an expensive project for which we will still need to raise a couple, 3-ish million more, something in that range. I think, we don't know exactly, but some number like that, I think, is a realistic idea. And candidly, given that there is a partnership here between the Friends and the county, I hope that get this RFP out and a contractor chosen and a firm number in the springtime of 25. We can spend next summer fundraising and getting this thing topped off so that construction can begin with ice out in the spring of 26. Be completed before the grant expires at the end of 26. So that trade-off with time and money is very real and important. So we're very hard work and trying to move this ball along to make sure that we don't get so far behind that if we got to go out another year, it may not happen at all.
Dick, just for full disclosure and clarification, my involvement was because Dick contacted me.
Yep.
I believe that you're headed in the right direction now, but when you commented about the county commissioners and maybe their unwillingness to get in a debate with Eagle, that was my opinion only. I was not expressing opinions for these folks
I
here.
didn't mean to misrepresent that.
All right.
And I certainly understand I'll admit to being a little frustrated as a committee. We've worked hard as volunteers for years to get this thing done at the most robust level per dollar that we can. And we'd really like to see the place protected to the level that it can be. However, the reality is what it is, and I recognize that some protection is better than no protection, and if we can do pick a number, 70% solution compared to what it would be, 75, 80, I don't know, but some is better than none, and we're looking at none if we don't move this forward. So while I hope that you will recognize our frustration in some of our work being for naught, it seems, I also would say that we as a committee recognize your responsibility to the county as a whole and understand that you don't want to get in a fight with Eagle and nobody wants to pay for it. And I'm aware of that as well.
And I would be, and you and I had this conversation, your group doesn't need to look at this as a defeat. Your group needs to look at this as, I've done everything I can to protect that shoreline within the resources I've been allowed. And you should celebrate that fact, not feel like I didn't get what I wanted.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think the truth is that any of the solutions are based on a lot of assumptions about future weather and climate and overtopping of waves and all those sorts of things that we really don't know about. I think we've been fortunate that the water has, come down from the 2020 high to now to give us a little bit of a window here. But as I've said a million times, this project is better a year early than a day late. And we still would really like to move it forward with as much protection as is possible.
Well, your frustration is palpable and warranted.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Your
it.
efforts are appreciated. And I hope you know that, I think we as a board feel very blessed to have people willing to put in the effort you have
Well,
to
you're
solve this
kind.
problem.
I appreciate that a lot. We will certainly keep you informed as progress happens, and I think it's happening. I mean, we sort of have to, we're at a decision point here, and I think our meeting with the contracting firm next week will give us an idea of, what kind of time frame they can come up with a revised plan to get out and the whole RFP process initiated. And again, if that can all happen sometime before deepest pocketed folks come back next summer, we're going to need to sit down with. A lot easier to do that in that, Labor Day or Memorial Day to Labor Day window than after most of the most capable people have gone back to Florida for the winter. So if we, in partnership with you all, can initiate that final funding piece next summer, then hopefully we all will be off and running. All right. Thank you all.
Sir. Thank you. Next presenter will be Mr. John Toski from Grand Traverse Band, Ottawa Chippewa Indians.
Thank you for making room to have me on your agenda. I met with your administrator and I attempted to meet with your sheriff last week to explain a casino facility that the tribe would like to open at its Benzie site by the Wesco gas station. I have the complexity of the issue is I'm an attorney, so I tend to see things in a legal complexity. I've been involved with Grand Traverse Band's major litigation since 1980s. In that regard, I want to mention that Helen Tanner is from Benzie County. Dr. Helen Tanner was a key witness in United States versus Michigan in the 1970s for the tribe. What the tribe would like to do is to open a gaming facility on the chart that is behind you on Hoadley Road, just down the street from Wesco gas station. We have submitted a what's called a notice of notification to the National Indian Gaming Commission and to the Office of Indian Gaming last summer, which was a very comprehensive brief and argument with numerous attachments explaining that in the view of the tribe, this site is eligible for gaming under the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act under what's known as the restored land exception to the categorical prohibition of gaming after 1988. That was basically the same argument that the tribe used for Turtle Creek and was successful in that case. We've appraised the governor's representatives and the attorney general's representatives of our plans. We did not want to disclose them until we had reached a certain go point, which was the federal process of 120-day review in which they could raise objections. At this point, they have not raised objections. And so our internal gaming commission at Grand Traverse Band issued a license November 21st. I then came to Benzie County and explained to the administrator and attempted to meet with the sheriff to explain what the tribe was doing. So the community is not surprised by the activities that the tribe has undertaken. The tribe and Benzie County have a long relationship going back to 1995 related to gaming. Since then, the tribe has provided close to $4 million to Benzie County. We have a cross deputization agreement with this sheriff for our residents that live on our housing development, which is about 12 houses located behind our facility that is on the board there. And so we are going to, over the next couple of months, go through the process of ticking through the regulations, both the federal and tribal regulations, on converting that facility into a gaming facility. And I realize that it's a very complex process. And so I would like to leave it open to answer questions with specificity that individual commissioners may have on what this process involves, whether on federal, state, or development issues. So if, with that short presentation, I'm open to any questions that anybody may have.
Tim?
Thank you for coming in and doing the presentation. You already answered some of my questions I had. But timing, is it the current community center you're looking to convert to?
Yes, that if you've been in our facility,
I have.
we have that huge entrance area with the cedar posts construction, which is right up there on the middle part. That would be converted into the gaming facility. The 3 rooms that are just to the bottom of that would be converted into the cash cages, the surveillance, and the what are called the back office functions. And those involve standards that you have to comply with, both on the National Indian Gaming Commission and also on the commission, the GTB Gaming Commission.
So timing.
Well, first of all, we have to change the electrical setup at the facility. And so that is being initiated right now. We have preliminary sketch drawings done for you, and the architectural work is going forward. We are entering into a contract in the near future with an engineering firm and architectural firm to do the plans in more complete detail, and then it will be converted.
And I'm going to ask some first responder questions because I currently am a first responder too. So I'm assuming that the tribe does have their own law enforcement. So
yes, it does.
And yeah, I do know you guys work closely with the sheriff's office. But then the next question comes into we had a presentation earlier today from one of our paramedics. Have you expect any type of volume of needs for medical calls? I mean, from experience from previous casinos that you guys opened up?
We do, and we have had experience with first responders, both at Leelanau Sands Casino, which is located in Peshabi-town, and at Turtle Creek, which is located in Grand Traverse County, Whitewater Township. And we've entered into MOUs with their first responders and our first responders. Our first responders are principally located in Leelanau County in Peshabi-town, and also in Grand Traverse County related to Turtle Creek. It's a very small group that we have. And so we will, if that's a concern of the county, we will certainly address it. We will provide documents that we have with other first responders.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that the Benzonia Fire Department is going to be really interested in timing and I guess population growth or activity, traffic You know, because they're gonna potentially have their workload increased as well.
In all of the developments that we have done with Leelanau County, with Grand Traverse County, we have provided funding for first responders and to a significant degree. In fact, that $4 million that was been provided over the last, since 1995 for Benzie County does relate significantly to first responders and other activities.
Yeah, I'm very aware of it. I'm kind of looking forward to it, this project, to be honest with you. I'm sure a lot of the first responding agencies are anxious to understand scope and volume.
The scope is small. The facility is small. We don't anticipate expanding it because it is a nature and scope is related to the volume in business. And initially, it will just be the present facility that we have. We own property across the street. We anticipate turning that into a parking lot if demand is sufficient for that.
Sir, how many jobs do you think this will provide?
We haven't projected any number of jobs. But I would initially opening up something like this, it's probably going to be 20 to 50 jobs.
Thank you.
Karen coming in, thank you for being here. Infrastructure that we have available currently, water or whatever that you would need. What do you have on that for information?
Off the top of my head, I don't have specific infrastructure numbers, but whatever it is, that'll be in the engineering report on development on what infrastructure we have to expand at Turtle Creek and also at Leelanau Sands. Initially at Leelanau Sands, we put in a sequence and batch reactor sewer facility for that to expand that operation.
Yeah, that's particularly what I was interested in.
And also we put in a water tower and a water system. We did the same at Turtle Creek. But those are staging processes, episodic that are developments.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure if I heard the answer. When do you expect to put this in service?
Probably within 2 months.
Oh, really? You've considered how it'll change the traffic patterns there also, I assume?
To be perfectly frank, no, I have not. But we would do a traffic study if that was a concern. And then if it is a concern, that obviously we want to address any safety and traffic concerns that the community identifies. But we have not. We've done traffic studies at Leelanau Sands. We did traffic studies at Turtle Creek. That facility where it's located is off the main highway, and it's kind of an odd corner to turn into at the West Coast Station. We recognize that. At Leelanau Sands, when we worked with MDOT and we put in turn lanes for the facility, and we did the same thing with Turtle Creek. But you have to go through the regulatory process with the Michigan Department of Transportation for the turn lanes. We also put in roundabouts on M72. If you go through M72, those roundabouts were paid for by the tribe. And the turn lanes into Turtle Creek were paid for by the tribe, and the turn lanes, if you go up to Peshavistown, were put in by the tribe. And so we would address the same concern, but those are driven by traffic study patterns.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to
And-
seeing the get opened up.
And you have all of the initial designs and the initial material that you sent out.
Yep, we're gonna add it to the packet too, so it'll be online.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would have one very quick question, not really relevant to your presentation, but are you going to be putting slot machines in there, or will you be putting other types of gambling in there?
It will be slot machines, table games. It would have to be a marketing study of what slot machines and table games. Craps tables are kind of hard to support in terms of the participants and the number of you have to have in effect 6 operators of a craps table, and so that's a little difficult to operate. A 21 pit is not that difficult to do. and then a separate card room is a little more difficult because you have to separate it out because of the requirements of what's called a rake system that is a percentage of each pot. And that's not that profitable in the long run. What is profitable is the hold on a 21 table card game. And what is profitable is a slot machine because that's really relatively easy to operate and labor costs are fairly small, but you do have to have slot technicians and you have to have what are called minimum internal controls for servicing everything. So that creates a regulatory infrastructure that I was talking about in terms of the 20 to 50 people that are necessary to operate a facility.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks again, sir. We're gonna take a short break. Be back at 10:30.
You're unmuted.
All right, we're back in session.
Good luck with that.
I'm guessing we're done with elected officials, and department heads, so county treasurer.
I don't know. It's only
Sorry,
been an
that- no,
hour
we're
and a
done.
half.
Good morning, County Treasurer Kelly Long. We got some finance money here that we spent. Let's see. So for the last 2 weeks, November 7th through November 21st, we have $440,557.63.
Make the motion that we pay the bills in that amount.
Sauer will second.
Motion and support. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, I would like to have a discussion if I could. I know you're talking about the accounts payable now, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. I noticed that in reviewing those, there's a request for payment that may be beyond outside our guidelines for reimbursement. And before I could approve that, I guess I'd like to have some discussion on it because we have specific rules about the timing of expenses being turned in. And it's specific to the commissioners. And it appears that it's outside those guidelines. And I'm hesitant to make exceptions to our own policies that we just readopted in July that I'm not sure how the perception of it doesn't look good if we're approving that.
What specific?
Yeah, let me give you the number on it. It is 101,101,8, I think it's 860. It is, it's 860. Do you see that?
Didn't grab the detail. What's the amount?
Here, I'll pull it up for you right here.
$2,403.96.
For last fiscal year.
Do you like, what's that?
Yes, so the per diem policy does state all per diem requests for county commissioners shall be submitted via email or hard copy to county administration within 30 days and within the same fiscal year. Payments shall be processed through payroll. If the county commissioner submits per diem more than 30 days after the fiscal year ends, it must be presented to the Board of Commissioners for approval. Within the 101, the per diem, the larger number of the per diem is from the last fiscal year.
So it's greater than 30 days and beyond the year end.
Correct. So the board does have to, approve that if the payment is to be valid.
And I know there's a motion with support out. I'm not going to belabor it. As the motion stands, I'm a no vote, but it's because of that one line item only.
Just want to know, I guess, how do we correct? This? We had made it a board policy, I believe, and it's just. I don't want to pick on anybody, but we need to follow that board policy. It's not that difficult to do. And there's no reason to go that far back. We just need to adhere to it. We also had a request at one time that we put our commissioner reports in a written form, and that didn't seem to hold water either. So I'm just saying, if we're gonna make a position, we're supposed to be following the rules. I suggest we start following the rules. Is there a way we can pull that part out and make the determination? It needs to be paid, no doubt about it. We need to not let it get this far out of hand.
So would you like me to give you the number of the total APs less that amount? Is that what you're asking?
Well, should we approve it separately? That's what I'm asking.
Well,
Yeah,
if you're going to approve it, I mean, your motion covers that.
Yeah.
Okay. all right.
Because Gary, I can tell you that even if you pull that out to act on separately, I'm a no vote again. Keep in mind, we've got policies that we ask all employees to adhere to. And yet we want to violate or make an exception for ourselves. I would understand if there was health reasons or maybe the inability to turn in a report, all kinds of reasons. But quite frankly, based on the due diligence I did prior to this meeting, I got none of that, other than the request was made a number of times. The request was finally finally fulfilled after more personal handling by administration. That's unacceptable.
So what, this is my commissioner report. What you don't see, Commissioner Janat,
Mhm.
is the previous mileage and per diem I put in was misplaced.
Well, nobody told me that.
Well, you didn't ask.
Well, absolutely, I did.
If there was
ask.
a reason that was
I
delayed.
did ask. So what you're saying is you did submit one earlier and it was overlooked and not paid?
Correct.
Oh, well, geez, oh, Pete's, that's an altogether
It was
different story together.
Apparently misplaced.
And you can confirm that.
I'm not aware of one being misplaced. I was never informed of that. So if it was misplaced, I was not made aware of that.
But when we say it, I mean, these are submitted monthly.
They're supposed to be submitted monthly. They're 30 days, yes, from that month. So within the next month.
And so how many months is this? I mean, is it fair to ask how many months this is covering?
Yeah, I can tell you. This covers from February through September and then October and partially November.
But you have that separated out for a separate check.
Yeah, they're separated out
Right.
based on the fiscal year.
So some of
Yeah.
these go back as far back as February,
Correct.
and those were misplaced every time you submitted it?
Only submitted it once. I was notified a month later that it got misplaced. I was a little bit frustrated.
Okay, but again, you said one for February. An expense report for February.
February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. October, November.
Okay, so we have multiple expense reports that apparently were misplaced.
It's the one for however many months that one was.
Which had to be 30 days.
It was probably more than that.
Okay.
Do whatever you have to do. It doesn't matter. Better.
You know, by the way, this isn't without precedence. I'm gonna, just as an antidote, years ago, I asked to be reimbursed for some expenses that I was incurring going to Northwest Community or Northwest, that group that you belong to.
Networks Northwest.
And there was a big debate among the commissioners on whether they should pay me or not, even though they were paying commissioners to go there. And by the way, I was an appointee from the board. I finally, in order to set aside the controversy, I just withdrew my expense report. But so I've been down this road myself. I get it.
Well, I guess I'll call the question, but I just need that in the forefront that we need to submit.
Mhm.
It's not rocket science. Just follow through and we're setting the example for the rest of the organization. It can,
Yeah, well, rest assured, next time someone needs an exception, they're gonna expect that exception to be granted.
Mostly I will ask because I think it's admin that receives our reports, right?
Hmm.
Okay, originally, mostly you receive the reports from the commissioners, right?
So the
And
process
if you
is,
don't receive one, is there a next step to that?
so typically we'll have a casual conversation with any one of you who maybe missed, like, hey, don't forget your per diem, or Jackie will say, hey, I'm doing payroll. It's not really formal in the sense of an official notice. It's a casual conversation. Process is you do your per diem, it comes to our office. Jackie does her part, then it goes to Rose, but now Stephanie to do her part because the mileage is paid separate from the per diem. And then from our office, it goes to Tammy's office for approval of the check. And then it goes to Kelly's office for final signature. Then it comes back to our office and we disperse. That's kind of the
Correct.
process.
And I present it to you because I am telling you, we have the money to do this.
So we have opportunity to get it in. We know the process and you follow through with a soft approach or whichever, a courtesy.
Bottom line is the checks have already been cut.
Believe so.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So when you guys
So
approve
anyway, I'm
those, it's
just-
in arrears.
Yeah, I think just need to be held accountable for our action. So let's vote on this.
He called the question, so you.
Not
No.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloff.
Yep.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
And just a quick reminder out there, auditors will be here next week. So for those of us in finance and all that good stuff, be prepared. Also, our GovPro guys are supposed to be here next week to set us up with our new credit card machines. And that's about it, really. Tax bills are gonna be in the mail, guys. We're all done. Yeah.
No.
Any other questions?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yes,
And
and
happy
happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Down to old business, consider rescinding the political activity policy.
In your packet, I presented, highlighted and struck through short excerpt from the existing personnel policy manual that we have for staff. Previously, about a month ago, I brought forward a separate policy that was a little bit beefed up from this short verbiage regarding political activity. There was a little hesitation on the policy, and so we brought it back to the drawing board with department heads and really discussed the policy and how it came to fruition and, you know, those sorts of things. In the grand scheme of it, the political activity is really managed by state law, election law, campaign finance. And so we thought as a whole, as department heads, it didn't really make sense to have this standalone policy that's really dictated by policy and law that's above us. And so what we're proposing is we rescind that short verbiage out of there. And then within the introduction to employment policy, address the verbiages that are specific to Benzie County, that you cannot campaign on company time and a company car and a company uniform. That's really what it boils down to. The rest of that policy really is covered by higher powers that be. And so it didn't make sense to put it on our books. And then maybe we're in contradiction if those laws are then later updated. And so we're proposing to simply rescind that, and then you will have coming back to you in the next couple of meetings, amendments to the introduction to employment policy, as well as the vehicle use policy.
All right, I'll make a motion that the Board of Commissioners rescinds the political activity policy.
9 seconds.
Motion and support. Is there further discussion?
I just have one question on this, and it says this can be covered in the vehicle use. Should that be is?
It will be. I'm going to bring it back for an
Oh, okay.
amendment, and then it will be. At this point, it's not.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Moved on to new business. Consider declaring a 2018 Dodge Charger surplus and authorizing its sale.
In your packet, you do have a memorandum from the undersheriff as well as a proposed motion from myself regarding declaring a 2018 Dodge Charger surplus and authorizing its sale. Pretty housekeeping in nature, getting rid of the older vehicles that are over mileage and out of warranty and getting rid of those at the highest bidder on my bid. And then those funds are utilized towards other vehicle purchases and equipment purchases in the future.
I'm gonna make that motion. The 2018 Dodge Charger, as described in the memorandum from Under Sheriff, dated October 2nd, 2024, be declared surplus and authorize the sale. The sale proceeds to be credited to the 425 Equipment Replacement Fund.
Markey will support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion?
Yeah, can I just ask, do these vehicles go on my bid Is there any reason it doesn't say it's going there? It's just says authorized for sale in the motion?
My bid is our standard practice, so it's not in the motion. If you'd like to make, say
I
that,
just
you're
want to make
welcome
sure we're
to.
going the same route
Yeah.
with everything we're putting.
It
Okay.
really is the easiest way to go about things and the most fair.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
Roloff,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Not,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye.
Yes.
Item B, consider declaring a 2015 Suburban surplus and authorizing its sale.
Similar to the sheriff's office, we're looking to sell the 2015 Chevy Suburban, which once operated as an Echo unit for EMS. This vehicle is old. It does have quite a few miles. There's a lot of body work that needs to be done. And it's really not utilized for that purpose anymore. Because we have a great inventory of ambulances. Typically, if we need an Echo type unit, we send the ambulance that has all the kit and caboodle and supplies to assist those neighboring agencies. So it doesn't make sense to keep this vehicle on our list. But if anyone wants it, we're gonna sell it. Just needs a little body work.
I'll make a motion that a 2015 Chevy Suburban be declared surplus and authorized for sale. The sale proceeds to be credited to the EMS refunds and rebates line.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Not,
Yes.
Markey.
Yes.
Item C, consider approving documents related to fiber internet connection at the emergency communication tower.
I will let Rebecca Hubers explain this topic. She has the better details than I do.
Hello, Rebecca Hubers, Office of Emergency Management. This relates to, we built a tower, now we need to run the tower.
Light up the
Means it
tower.
needs lights and heat and those types of things. And one of our obligations is it has to communicate with all the other towers in the state. And because it sits stick in a bowl, we can't put a microwave hop, which is those big drums that talk to each tower, and the tower talks to the tower and it talks to the tower. So our obligation for this tower is that we had to run fiber connectivity. That fiber connectivity has to go technically all the way to Vanderbilt to communicate with the main system and back and forth. We paid a sum to Cherry Capital, but we also rode a little bit on the fact that Crystal Lake Township had committed some of their money towards Cherry Capital for infrastructure for fiber. And that's why we ran the fiber to the tower. We had that conversation. We paid a little bit out of the money from the tower project, along with just riding that Robin wave and the fact that fiber was going through that community anyway. So we have the fiber tie through Cherry Capital to the tower. Now it's like, how does that talk to that? And we needed one vendor. There are only a couple of vendors in the state that have that bandwidth to function, and that's Merit and then PFN. We talked to both of them. Again, we were able to offset the original costs, which was over $100,000 by using Cherry Capital during their current project in Benzie County. So the overall build of that was kind of a little bit easier for us, but we still have to pay the bill to connect. And it's not just internet service. It is designated primary. We pretty much get our own route to there. So it's not interrupted. It's not burdened down by just consumer internet use. We had a minimum standard that we had to do. This layer 0.2 point-to-point Ethernet. They've met all the obligations of the tower. Merit originally gave us, Merit wants their own system. Think of maybe what Charter has been doing. It's very closed. And so they were gonna charge us completely to do the whole thing. And so it's super costly, and so they withdrew. PFN, on the other hand, worked with Cherry Capital, and they ended up purchasing a couple of the circuits from Cherry Capital to be designated just for this build. And then what PFN also doesn't do is touch Vanderbilt directly. So they actually have to do a third-party lease. That particular service, which is TrueStream, wouldn't sell them the circuits like Cherry Capital did. So we have a quote for the monthly reoccurring charges for that internet connection of $775 a month recurring costs, and then a one-time cost of $775. Two things that I wanted to remind you is we do have a cost share agreement with Frankfurt for 3560. Was that what it is? 3070. And then currently
3565.
and most of this has already gone through buildings and grounds. So we've had this conversation. I'm sorry if it's new to you, but for buildings and grounds, we've been talking about the cost share, the cost to keep the lights on, to run the building. There is someone today looking at whether there is like a offset cost placement. So it would be T-Mobile is actually looking at our tower today to see if it was big enough to fit something on there. And if we do something like that, we could offset the cost of the tower by leasing space, so to speak.
Nice.
Then that was been our goal, is to find somebody who will help us net zero that tower. So we're still working on that process, but in the meantime, we still have to pay the light company, pay the internet company, pay the gas company. And we're getting to that stage of the process right now. So this is a quote in agreement with PFN to provide the service that we need to meet the specifications of the tower and its services to connect to the rest of the state for communications. Because again, we're not hopping from tower to tower. It doesn't have that capability. It's not tall enough to do that.
Rebecca, typically when we're looking at contracts, we'll have legal review of it, but this makes no mention of that.
I sent it to Katie and I'm sure it has to go through legal review yet.
So it still has to go through legal review?
Yeah, sorry, I missed that in the motion specifically, but typically they do go through anything that we're signing. Aside from service orders, just the agreement pieces of it.
Right. I'm gonna make a stab at this motion, okay? Jeanette moves that the Board of Commissioners approves a service order, service agreement, and accepted quote 589 from Peninsula Fiber Networks to provide internet service to emergency communication tower with attorney legal counsel review and funds being available in the general fund.
Mark, you will support.
Motion and support, discussion?
I have one question, and maybe it's just my lack of understanding on this. If this contract gets signed, is it for like a duration, like for a year? And is there flexibility with it? If we have somebody else renting, that it can change from the 775 a month to 400 or whatever?
No, this is like the light bill. This is the bill that we're
That's
going to
okay.
pay for internet service to have. If we get somebody who is able to take that, we will take that as income and this
I
will
see.
offset
Okay.
itself. So that we'll pay
That's
out the
the
bills, but we'll get some income hopefully, but I can't guarantee that.
No, thank you. That's what I was not understanding.
Yeah,
Thank
same
you.
with the
I
portion from
understand.
Frankfurt. I doubt that they will look at every bill and
Correct.
quantify 30%. I think we'll have to come up with this is how much annually our bills are gonna cost. We need to set aside that amount and then just pay the bills.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
If Tim Malone were here, this would be a benefit of the open access model.
Correct.
That was
Correct.
used
This
with
is
our
Correct.
Yes.
This is
internet
about
for all.
$200,000 less than
Right.
what it would have cost us for the opening, because of the open internet. He's
Perfect.
actually
Yep.
giving us that and still providing services, because 2 circuits is 2 tiny strands of all that's been put in there. So
Rebecca, yesterday you and I spoke about, it looks like there's 2 separate invoices, each one at $775 a month.
yeah, I'm not There aren't two separate invoices. One's a quote and I'm not sure, but there will be $775 monthly reoccurring charge
Okay.
is what it comes down to. I think that the whole packet just had 3 different documents attached, but it's not 2 different bills.
Okay, all right,
Right.
thank you.
I think one is just spelled out a bunch of different things. And again, if PFN had owned all the way up and we didn't have to pay an extra $300 to TrueStream, that'd be fine, but that's not how it works right now. They don't want to give up there.
Okay, just from a presentation, at least in the packet, it looked like 2 different invoices, even with different services being provided. So,
Yeah, I think it's, one has, this is a quote and the other one actually has the signature form. So it's the same numbers, but it's 2 different documents. One will have signatures.
A service
Got it.
order
Yeah.
reference.
thank you.
Yeah, one's a service reference number.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Roll call.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Not,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nice,
Yes.
Roloff.
Yes. Item D. Consider a letter of support for the Frankfurt Airport request for programming. Thank you for your patience, ma'am.
Good morning, happy Tuesday, Brook Pop Airport, Frankfurt Airport. I shared the ACIP, the Airport Capital Improvement Plan with everyone. It lists concepts. MDOT calls them concepts or projects. It's for the next 5 years. We began the process with, it's an annual meeting with Michigan Airport Programming. It occurred in September. The last MAP meeting in September of 2023, the navigation easement with the Pines wasn't final, so I included the consent judgment in the ACIP for your review. It was also forwarded to MDOT because it decides our program. Let's see here. So per the judgment, the obstructions or the trees will be removed by April of 2026. So MDOT is mandating that the airport incur the costs and then request reimbursement after completion. This last year, the airport applied 6 grants to the easement, which is basically the bond. So we did really well with that. The final year, the ACIP 2029, the projects are for rehabbing the runway. So all of the MDOT and bill grants that we've been receiving, everything is going towards the bond. Let's see, we cannot start any new projects. So all of the projects in the ACIP, when they reference navigation easement, obstruction removal, that is all for the Pines. So in June, MDOT did a inspection. There's a couple of license discrepancies. So we currently have a provisional general license. So having a general license allows us to get the $150,000 AIP grants annually. We're in provisional status because, let's see here, so runway lights and pine obstructions and a couple of other very small things. A few years ago, the FAA changed their runway light requirements. And we're not able to get those costs for modifications in our annual grant. So that has to come out of pocket. I'm currently writing a grant. As of October 31st, a new opportunity came up. It's a state local grant. There aren't any FAA assurances or strings attached to it like our annual 150,000. So with this grant, I am asking to address the deficiencies, which are removing the pines and having the runway lights modified and the pavement crack sealed and remarked. So that, when I spoke to the city, my total is like 260, but I'm up to $308,000 or $308,000. So that'll cover all of those costs. And one of the requirements for the grant is support, local support. So that's why I've included the draft letter in everybody's packets. I'd like the letter back by the 1st of December. The grant gets sent to MDOT by the 5th. I will know in January. And then when I come to speak to everybody in February, I'll have that information. But this is a really great opportunity. If we can get this money, it puts us so much farther ahead because then we don't have to use our annual grant money for the obstruction removal, things like that. It'll get paid for with this outside grant. And then we can get closer sooner to paying off the bond. Let's see here. So, and I do want to address some of the concerns from a couple meetings ago. We had talked about, airport representation, county board representation on the airport board. So Ken Lawrence, he is an airport rep for the county. He did accompany me to the first meeting, and he did state that if the board would like, he would resign. So you could put a county commissioner on the airport board. So that is, it's whatever you guys choose to do. And I also spoke to the airport attorney about having, including the board liaison in our closed session meetings. And that's absolutely okay. Also, we just need to be informed. And as you know, you go through the process to accept that person in. The Meetings Act applies. That's absolutely acceptable. I think that's all I have.
Where's Crystal Lake Township stand right now? Respect to the partnership. It wasn't undocumented before.
So we have an amended MOU that our legal counsel put together regarding that and bringing basically all three partners together as one. And then I sent that over to Brooke, and her and I are still working on that, but there was a document drafted. So we're working on that.
Yeah, the board did review that.
Yep.
And so we have no issues if you would like to send it on to the other entities. We didn't offer any sort of edits or.
Perfect.
So, yeah, no, we're good to go.
So the concerns that we'd mentioned in the last few months, you guys have addressed. Sounds like, and I appreciate that, by the way.
I don't think the city of Frankfurt is gonna have any issues, no telling about the other party when it actually comes to the question.
Okay, but at least we're working towards
Yes.
the appropriate solution.
Yep.
And I just want to restate. So Karen, right now you're the liaison, right?
Correct.
So if you go into a closed meeting,
Mhm,
you can include her if she requests to be
Mhm.
included.
Yep,
Okay,
the-
then
the
you're
board-
obligated under the same terms as
correct,
you would be anybody in attendance.
right.
All right.
Any other discussion?
I'd like to. I'm still heated up. That lawsuit. And the judgment, I look at this whole thing as we're helping Frankfurt Airport pay for screw up from an attorney. Because we didn't have representation in some of these meetings, this was totally blindsided, except through rumors through the community. And to say the least, I don't feel very comfortable sticking our necks out until we have that agreement with Crystal Lake Township. I cannot support a letter of recommendation for this grant. Till that stuff's in our hands. We have approval from Crystal Lake. Just stating that, I just feel that we were totally blindsided by this, and the liability for the county is huge. Just don't feel this is appropriate at all, and I know Corey, I think, was our representative. I would feel comfortable if he was required to show up once in a while and discuss things, but I think he's only been here once in what? Since he's been chairman of that board.
It's been
I'm not taking it out personally, but there's a liability issue for the county. And I feel extremely uncomfortable approving anything with the airport till things get straightened out.
Well, the letter of support, this is time sensitive for.
Correct. And it's only in
And it-
support of us getting this extra grant,
Correct.
which
It's-
are no strings attached.
So kind of like two different issues, the way I see it.
I
Really,
look at the liability that the county is being handed with no real explanation as to why or what happened here. What the excuse was. Did you have a poor attorney? Did he give you poor recommendations? These are just things that really concern me because I represent the public that's paying the bills on a lot of things. Crystal Lake Township's got as much say as we've got, but they don't want to seem to want to get into an agreement with us. And until that happens, I think we're at a standstill.
I just want to clarify that while the county was part of the initial partners to start an authority and then Crystal Lake was added later via the law that allows that under the authority, our attorney has advised us that the liability is not ours unless you want to take on that liability as a board at a later date. When they became an authority, they became their own entity and their own body, and it's their liability until they come to us and say, please help. And then you say, okay. So
So if they
keep that
can't
in mind.
afford to pay the liability.
They also
we're
have the
members of
authority
this.
to
I'm
bond
very.
to pay for that.
The ACIP, it does outline, they are earmarking this year's grant, next year's grants for the next 5 years. They're earmarking all of those grants, except for the final one, because it should be paid off by then. So they're earmarking all of these grants to go towards this liability.
The liability.
Right.
So they're looking for alternate funding sources because they've depended upon these ACA grants for the airport. Well, because they're earmarked for the liability,
Mhm.
we need other money to do what
So
those
this
grants
money's
were doing
been earmarked for the settlement.
by the state.
Right, so the new grant that I'm asking for, it's extra money that the state of Michigan had left over from COVID. There was like $4 million signed to MDOT Aero, which they created this grant for, just to help out airports like ours.
And so the letter of support
Is only,
is, it's just a letter of support. You need it by a certain date, by the first.
right,
That money is there. It doesn't obligate us, but it
Correct.
gives the airport a better standing to receive the grant.
That scores higher.
Yes.
Gary, I understand where you're coming from, and I would use the expression leverage. You know, now would be the time to get the leverage for the things that we want done. But what I've heard Brooke say is that they're moving towards those solutions.
Yes.
We did learn that the liability for that payment for that judgment stops at the airport. There are certain conditions, like our withdrawal from the airport authority could trigger certain events. But I believe they're making great steps compared to where we were at a year ago. We've got great steps made towards organizing this properly.
Yep.
I don't, if we spoke yesterday on the phone for full disclosure, and if I had heard, well, Art, there's really nothing that's taken place yet, I'd take your exact same position. But that's not what I heard at all.
And Brooke and I have a great relationship. And so I think that's helping with I think you guys felt very disjointed from the airport authority for a long time. And Brooke and I have a great relationship. So we're trying to help that. And that's why you see her more often and, keeping you guys advised of what's actually going on.
and when I was on the township board and on the airport board, I tried to always keep in mind what I wanted to know as a board member, what I needed to know, what information was pertinent. So that's just what I'm doing here too, is just trying to facilitate that. And yeah, I know how this works. Like I try to help out the whoever does the minutes. I give you my script. So I have to stumble through all of my acronyms and
Yeah, I also want to acknowledge the effort to inform us, and I think we've identified some problem areas, and I have great confidence that those are solutions being worked towards.
right.
I don't think Corey is going to be our point person with the airport authority anymore. I think it's going to be Brooke, and I think I see a commitment to
But he
keep those
was our
lines of communication.
appointee. That's
I
my concern.
understand, and he still serves.
Right, yes,
on the board.
absolutely. He's
Right.
there for every meeting. He's very much involved. He does have a full-time job. He's managing the Frankfurt Credit Union, so he is overwhelmed and busy with that. But like I said, Ken Lawrence is your other representative, and he is willing to resign so you can put someone else in his stead.
Which is a bigger question that you pose, because, and the board is gonna have to take some time to consider that. Do we want a capable person with historic knowledge? A volunteer in the community, or maybe paid
Who does
position, I'm
Ken
not sure.
represent now? Crystal Lake
Right.
Township?
No, he's
County.
yours.
You
So
have two reps.
I'm hearing Brooke say that they're already on the same page as us, as our liaison can enter closed session. It's just a matter of stating that in the motion. So like when we go into closed session, you say county administration, human resources, and it allows us into closed session. I've sent boilerplate motions to Brooke, so she has that language for her board to make that happen. So if that is that's sufficient, you don't have to make that hard decision if you don't want to remove an existing person off that board. Keep in mind though, closed session is closed session is closed session. You can go in there, but it doesn't mean you can talk about it unless there's another closed session and, you know, with the attorneys and those sorts of things. So you can get that person in a closed session, but technically they're not allowed to tell you about it.
But here's the difference. The commissioner goes into closed session. They hear some things that are triggers.
Yep.
There are legal ways of saying, I need to inform the commissioners what's the steps that I have to go to, even if we have to go into closed session with their
Right.
permission,
Mhm.
there's a way to get there.
Yep.
The problem we had up until now is that nobody was even telling us. And by the way, these issues go back, you know, even before Corey, quite frankly.
They do.
They go back to a board that's even no longer there.
Mhm.
I'm much more comfortable today with the level of communication.
Thank you.
And shame on us if our commissioner that's appointed as a liaison isn't communicating it with us. I mean, that's for the chair to address here. And now that Karen, and I realize that, you know, your time's ending, but whoever replaces you just needs to know, look, I want to be in these discussions because I need to hear what's going on.
Yep.
Mhm.
I'm going to echo something that was said here. I would much rather have people that have the skills to be on that board versus, oh, I just want to have a commissioner on there. That's what's relevant is, do you know what you're doing on that board?
Right. And this is probably notice to you, Brooke, that with, you know, Karen Cunningham's term, Commissioner Cunningham's term coming to an end, you will have a new person as
Mhm.
liaison. And so whatever you can provide that person to bring them up to speed as quickly as possible, it will become their role to keep us informed.
And that is one reason why I did such, the narratives with the budget and things like that is give you a more of a bit of a comprehensive background. You can kind of go back to it. What is she talking about when she says AIG? I mean, have something, that it can explain these things. So.
Has there been a motion made on this yet?
No.
No, I was going to make the motion, and we'll have discussion afterwards, I guess. But I make the motion that the Board of Commissioners approves the letter of support for Frankfurt City County Airport Authority Program application to the Michigan Department of Transportation and authorizes the chair to sign.
Jeanette supports.
Motion and support. Any further discussion?
I just want to make a comment. I think communication has improved greatly this year. You know, I've been on the board or there as a liaison, and you know, we both model what we want to help educate and have the other partners know. So going from Crystal Lake to you and Frankfurt and having all the partners involved and having that continuity has really helped. And you doing the quarterlies, I mean, you and I have talked quite a bit going back and forth, and I think we have made really great strides for understanding and communicating with each other, and apparently with admin too. So
Thank you.
I think you're doing a
And there's always
fabulous
room for
job.
improvement. So if anybody can have any suggestions or whatnot, please feel free to let me know.
Thanks, Brooke.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes,
Sauer.
No.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke.
Brings us to item E. Consider supporting a grant application to MDARD for infrastructure funding. Greg,
Chris.
Chris, sorry.
I will go ahead and pull up a PowerPoint that Chris is gonna go through. Thank you for muddling through the morning with us.
Morning muddle.
So in your packet, I did give some information. This did go before the EDC as well. What we're after today is one, to just kind of talk about a potential project in Benzie County related to natural gas, which is something that we've talked about over the years and as part of our strategic planning, is to just expand those infrastructure in the county. And the other thing is to ask for basically your permission to apply for a grant if we're able to make the tight turnaround for this project, so we can maybe see it through in 2025 or 2026. So Chris Hackbarth, I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you. Chris Hackworth. I'm the regional manager for DTE. Appreciate the opportunity to come back in front of you and chat about this project. I was here a couple of years ago when DTE was applying for a grant from the state to do a project down in Thompsonville area, Copemish. We were unsuccessful in that grant, but it did allow our team the opportunity to do a lot of kind of digging into the different opportunities that might exist to do expansions of our service here within the county. One of those is a project that we've been looking at, which you can see from the slide here, would essentially cover the footprint from the high school east to the edges of Inland Township, across parts of Benzonia Township and Homestead Township. Right now, and you can see kind of these next few, it kind of shows the rough initial look at how we would route this. It would impact potentially 250 new customers, most of those residential, but it would include St. Ambrose and Sleeping Bear Farms. And I know they have some expansions that they're working on, and they're very, very interested in pursuing this service to help their infrastructure. Commissioner Janot, I know one of the questions you had raised during the EDC meeting related to DTE's existing footprint in those townships. Benzonia Township, we have very good coverage. We actually come the full length of 31 from Homestead down around. We go down to Joyfield Road. So we've got service all the way down there along that spine. Very good coverage in Benzonia Township, mainly though to the west of 31. We have a little bit to the east, a couple of areas to the east that we do cover. Homestead Township, really though, it's the Village of Honor and that 31 corridor, and that's it. So this would really provide an opportunity to expand service within Homestead Township and cover that east end of Benzonia Township. We have about just over 6,100 customers in Benzie County today. A lot of coverage again, Beulah, Benzonia, around Crystal Lake, around Platte Lake, Village of Honor, Frankfurt.
And Chris, when you say customers, you mean households, right? Not
Meters.
6,100 individuals, but
Meters.
Meters.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's how we measure it, by meters. So again, in looking at this potential project that we've identified, normal process for DTE is very similar. The state requires us to have the customer pay for the full cost of any connection. Very similar to water and sewer. We are not allowed to socialize any expansion across our rate base. So when we look at projects, we have to look at density, number of customers, potential revenue coming in. That then is used, that formula is used to offset the cost of installation, and whatever gap is left is what the customer attachment cost is. As we've worked through our history under this model, we work to keep that customer attachment cost below $3,000 to ensure that we get enough signups so that we don't get accused of subsidizing it on the rest of our rate base. We have this Public Service Commission, Michigan Public Service Commission, very closely watches our expansion and the connections that take place. And if we don't meet certain goals, they will come down on us, as they did in our recent rate case. So this project, we'd be looking at, again, 250 customers, about 56,000 feet of main, be running from that end point at just east of the high school. In order to get it to that just less than $3,000 amount, we're about $100,000 short of getting the project to that point. That would put the connection cost at just over $2,900 per person. For residents, we are allowed to spread that over 10 years. Any landlord, commercial property or rental property, the landlord would have to pay that $2,900 up front to connect. See from there, what that monthly cost would be for someone. They can pay that off at any time. They don't have to run the full 10 years. This next slide gives you a little bit of kind of how that formula is created, what goes into that. And then again, just some information here on where the funding goes from that. DTE gas comes in two components. Your gas bill comes in two components. supply charge and the distribution charge. The gas supply is net zero to DTE. We pass along whatever we purchase the gas for is what the customer pays. The distribution side is where the commission actually sets the markup for us. So we are only allowed to make a certain rate of return based upon the Public Service Commission, and those rates are set at the state level. Again, kind of walks you through all of that, and then information on savings cost. This is, I've been talking with the county, talking with some of the other individual folks, St. Ambrose, about this, trying to bring this project around. You know, looking at what those options are to fill that $100,000 gap. One of the things that precipitated some movement recently is Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development did offer a rural infrastructure grant opportunity. $100,000 level. Deadline on that is December 5th. So that was one of the kind of brought this forward and said, hey, here is one option for filling this gap. You know, certainly there could be other partners that could be brought to the table, but we came to the EDC to talk about this and want to bring it to your attention as well. And if this is one way that potentially the funding could be achieved to fill that gap.
And so adding to that conversation, I sat down yesterday with Jason Barnard and David Davis. I invited Tia. She wasn't able to come. I actually haven't heard from her, if you could help me with that follow-up. But talking with the townships to see if there's any way they'd like to be involved in this process as well, of coming up with money, matching funds, what have you. Both of them said absolutely. They're going to bring it to their next boards for conversation to see if there's any way they can participate in coming up with this $100,000. St. Ambrose has also committed at least $10,000 to the project and are willing to help write that grant for me to apply for that grant on behalf of the county. At this point, there's no ask from the county for money. We're trying to figure out kind of just this community impact way of coming up with these dollars to make this project happen. I'm not saying I won't come back to you in a month or two and say, hey, the townships can give this much. Can we give this much? That, you know, that might happen. But at this point, it's just a matter of getting that permission to assign that grant and continue these conversations with the townships. I'll plan to go to the township meetings to kind of just be there as a sounding board and answer questions as well. Because both of those supervisors believe that the townships would be willing to help pay for this as well.
Katie, we would only come back and look for funding if we failed to get the grant. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yep. So the idea is to apply for a grant and, you know, and then if the grant is unsuccessful, look for more grants and then talk about ways we can support this project as a whole. Natural gas and public utility infrastructure has been a topic of conversation since I've been here. And so we're trying to all work together to come to a way to make this project happen for Benzie County.
And Chris, I know the request is going to be for 100,000 on the grant. Is it possible that say, look, we'll do 50,000 or some matching level, or is it all or none?
For DTE, you're saying to match?
Well, this request for the grant, you're saying it's $100,000. Is it all or none in order to get it? Or is there something in between that they may come back and say, look, we'll give you 50,000. You got to come up with a match of 50,000.
So the grant has a 30% match.
Okay.
And so we're going to apply for the maximum amount we can with the committed match of St. Ambrose. So that'll get us to close to 50,000. And then the townships, we're going to talk to the townships about what they can commit, look for additional grant dollars. And if there's any other shortfall on top of that, I may come back to the board to make up some of that.
Okay, so the grant itself doesn't cover the full gap.
It could, but we don't have $30,000 committed. We only have 10 at this point, and we're kind of running against the clock. And so we're working with what we have committed to just try to get it out there to see if we can even get another 30,000 from the grant. But the grant maximum is $100,000 that we could apply for, period.
And it's a 30% match.
Correct.
Okay.
And at this point, I only have a committed $10,000 match. So I would apply for the maximum I could with that $10,000.
Appreciate the clarification.
Yep.
So Chris, knowing it's a goal of this board to expand infrastructure in our area, if this project were to go well and you saw partnerships developing, could this lay groundwork for more expansion within our county?
Absolutely. I know we've actually had some conversations at the EDC meeting of, and you know, from the tribe earlier, there's an interest in the Hoadley Road area and getting gas back there. So there's, you know, other conversations there. as you guys know, we have a big interest in trying to cross that gap to get down to Thompsonville. That right now, the distance without any customers in between keeps that cost too high to do. But if we can come back and work with our state legislators and maybe get some more funding into that grant program that was there 2 years ago, that would be a way that we could come back at that. But that is, I've been talking to Katie quite a bit about different opportunities to bring service into the county.
It's exciting.
I'd like to make the motion, then we can have further discussion, but Jeanette moves that the Board of Commissioners authorizes the county administrator to apply for grant funding to support a natural gas expansion project as outlined in the November 26th Board of Commissioners packet.
And
Guy
support.
seconds.
We both support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloff.
Yeah.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Chris.
Thanks for
you.
your patience, Chris.
Oh,
Item F, consider approving a clinical agreement with the Northwest Regional Fire Training Center to provide required hours for paramedics and EMTs.
So at a recent meeting, we approved a clinical agreement with West Shore Community College. This is an additional clinical agreement for our EMS. We are working on a third one that I'm hoping to bring back to you in the near future with MMR. But these are very, very important when it comes to our students that we have with us on our staff. It provides protections for all folks involved. It also really helps us to bring those folks in without them having to accept an official job offer. There's a lot to be said about time on the job without having the responsibility of it truly being your job. And so in a lot of ways, this is how we scout people to come to Benzie EMS.
I'll make the motion. The Board of Commissioners authorizes the clinical affiliation agreement with the Northwest Regional Fire Training Center for clinical affiliation for the Emergency Medical Services Program. Agreement subject to approval as to form by legal counsel. Authorizes the chair to sign.
Second.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Janat,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloff.
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki.
Yes.
Cunningham.
yes.
Thank you. Item G, consider a letter of support for revenue sharing trust fund legislation.
I emailed all of you. I probably re-emailed it, but Mac sent it first. So Mac is looking for letters of support from the counties around the state for legislation related to a revenue trust fund. For years, Mac has been working on this to try to, put money back into the coffers of counties and really stabilize that amount of money that's coming to the counties for planning purposes. They're very, very close to putting something in, having something, codified in the books. And so they're looking for letters of support. Now, as a county, we don't typically do letters of support and resolutions of support for county, legislation at the state level. But this is something that plays a huge part into a county and counties in Michigan. And so I brought this forward because I do believe it's very, very important. And I do believe our name should be on the list of supporters.
And this is likely to be taken up during lame duck.
That's absolutely true.
I attended my MAC Health and Human Services, and this is in the legislative portions. They would really like these to be individually signed by commissioners.
Okay.
So if we could each get one on Benzie letterhead
I
to
can do
sign
that.
and provide for submission, that is what the request is. She said she'll take them from counties as a whole, but she would prefer them individually.
Are all of you okay with just email, or do you want me to apply digital signatures for you? Let me know what your thought process is. If I email all of you an individual letter, are you capable of printing it? Or would you prefer we print them in the office and you just come in and sign?
Well, speaking for myself, if you send it to me, I can do a digital signature and send it back. So it'd take me just seconds to get done.
Seconds to do.
And I've already submitted it.
You've
as you
submitted
know,
one,
And I
yep.
sent it to you, yeah. And that was my question. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure. either.
Yes, and
So I guess who wants a hard copy that I can get printed for you to come sign? Gary,
Yeah, it's easier for
Yolanda.
me to.
Evan,
I'm gonna
And
have
Bob.
to do it, yeah.
okay.
Unless, Mr. Drager wants to come over and fix my computer.
He only works for county.
Katie, can we be specific though? When do we need those back to you for mailing?
So, well, if you're gonna do it digitally, you can submit it digitally unless you want me to submit on your behalf.
Okay, but and for the hard copy ones,
For the
there's a
hard-
deadline to get those in.
And
Yes.
she reiterated in the meeting, some people are sending these to the governor. She wants them sent to Mac because it's a timing thing, how they want to deliver this stack.
Well, if everybody could hang out for literally 5 minutes, I can have these printed for you to sign right after this meeting.
Perfect.
And then
Do it.
I'll just take care of it for you.
Well, at my MAC session, they also wanted a countywide one, like the board itself and then the commissioners individually. That's what they said at the Judicial and Public Services meeting.
So
And
I
that-
can print
In
it
fact,
all.
that was said also at my meeting. So I'll take the responsibility of suggesting that we did it as a group. I just want to see it get done.
Yeah.
But are you suggesting, well, if we're sending individual, we should do a group one
No,
also?
both. They
Both.
wanted both. They suggested both.
Interesting.
Well, Bob would just sign the one on behalf of the board,
Right.
and then we would add ours individually.
That's what they asked at my,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
kind of different message at mine, but why not do both?
Right. So, like I said, 5 minutes after the meeting, I can
let's do
have
that.
those printed for you for everybody to see.
good deal.
Somebody want to make that motion?
I make the motion that the Board of Commissioners approves the letter of support for Revenue Sharing Trust Fund legislation and authorizes commissioners to sign.
Mark, you'll support.
Could I ask, based on this conversation, should the recommendation say authorizing the chair to sign? Because we're all going to sign individual ones. We don't need anybody's permission to do that. But it was just recommended that we send one from the full board authorizing the chair to sign on behalf of the full board.
Okay, yes.
As amended.
So I'll support the amendment.
Roll call.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloffs.
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki.
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Janai,
Yes.
Thank you. Item H, consider replacing and adding security cameras to the government center. Ms. Hubers.
Rebecca Hubers, Office of Emergency Management. So this went twofold. Video or cameras and upgrades have been on the ARPA list as approved. This was waiting on me and the company to build a dispatch center and then do some other things. And so we finally got on the same page. I presented to Buildings and Grounds a proposal, and I was asked to come back with a couple other things. So to upgrade our system, we actually have 13 analog cameras. If you know the difference between digital and analog, it's just VHS versus whatever else type of thing. We're upgrading wanted to upgrade the system. As soon as we upgrade the system, we know what's going to happen. The existing server, which is several years old, is probably gonna poo-poo. So we went through this whole rebuild, build up. What do we do? You know, keeping the current analog cameras, or do we replace them? If we replace them one at a time, that's actually going to be more expensive than if you just did it all at once. We looked at the budget that was available. During Buildings and Grounds, it originally was replacing the 13 analog cameras plus adding 2 for a couple of blind spots. Buildings and Grounds had said we want 2 more externally, so there's actually will be 17 new cameras, not new, but replacing some of 13 of the old bad video ones and then 4 new ones for the outside. And all the pieces and parts and switches and servers that go with it. So when I took all that and brought it back, it came to 22,540, so 22,540. The budget I was given was not to exceed 445, something like that.
25.
So it's under that was given from Buildings and Grounds, and that's available in the ARPA money. The only thing I could do to make this come down would be to get lower resolution cameras than what was offered. I work well with this company, and I don't think that he's doing anything else out of line with what we've asked for.
This project has been vetted through the Buildings and Grounds subcommittee quite a bit. So we've talked about this, we've looked at this. Like she said, the vendor that we work with has been great to work with. This is a huge improvement. This also responds to requests from elected officials and the judges regarding security of the parking lot. And we've had issues where there's been slip and falls, and I've been contacted, for coverage of the slip and fall, and we don't have it. So this is a huge improvement across the board for various reasons. And like Rebecca said, we do have funding available for this. We actually estimated the project being much higher. And so when it came in at just under 25,000, we all were happy.
I'm going to make the motion that the Board of Commissioners approves the proposals from TKS Security dated November 20th, 2024 for security system upgrades as recommended by the Building and Grounds Subcommittee in the not to exceed amount of 25,000 with funds available in the Capital Projects Fund.
Mark, you'll support, I'm on that.
And Katie, this was budgeted for, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and potentially we might get some discount from our insurance carrier if we have more
Correct.
cameras.
So this falls under their guidelines. It's just a matter of if they're offering those, but yes, we would, if it's available, we'll apply for that 50% grant.
MMRMA put a hold on RAP grants for a while, so we haven't been able to apply for much lately. But if it becomes available, which I'm being told it should be available here again in the next month or so, we'll go ahead and apply for those funds and try to recoup some of that back again.
Because it
Well-
qualifies.
But we might also get a discount on our premium too.
No, not necessarily.
No?
No.
Okay.
Have these cameras that we currently have in place been helpful in the past?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've had to pull,
Careful.
just for court cases, let alone, FOIA requests and whatnot. Obviously, there's no inside offices or anything, but our public spaces. We're a government building and people, I guess, expect to have some kind of oversight or security, and that's what this is. It's a little outdated. It's time for us to unfortunately update it.
Roll call.
Nye. Yes. Roloffs.
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Markey.
Yes.
Item I, consider letter of support for the Smart Water Grant.
I'll be really brief. I don't actually have much else to add. You have the language for our letter of support, and Bill Anderson and I came and presented a couple weeks ago about this work. And so just to say, we're applying for $40,000 from our friends at Eagle. Sorry, this is, they really are, but I totally get the complication. This is an open book as to what you can apply for, and we've, as you heard from Bill and I, done the due diligence about what the most important projects would be, and this rose to the top. So there have been developments in Benzie County that have shined a spotlight that sometimes are dispersed permitting and zoning processes allow certain projects to slip through the cracks and inadvertently damage our natural resources. So I'm not going to get into the details of those projects. Just know that it's wasteful. They're sitting out there. If you drive through Honor, you can see the, intermediate results of some of these failures in the system, and we don't want that to happen. So that's what we're asking for support. I'll also say, I referenced the county's master plan, which I know is being updated right now. The final goal in the plan talks about exploring options for shared zoning and permitting and speaking with our local municipalities about how this is working and their ability to administer their zoning. That is essentially exactly what we're going to be doing, is going municipality to municipality and understanding how this system works for them. What resources do they need? What is their process like? And the results of this grant would be a detailed gaps analysis to understand. We've got enough anecdotal evidence to kind of know, but this would be the official. Here are the gaps in our systems, our ordinances, our zoning rules, and our processes that are allowing some of, these things to happen and our natural resources to be damaged. And if we can, some, next steps for future phases of work, project budgets, things like that, to actually eliminate some of those barriers and smooth over and fill those gaps. So that's the very short version of what this work would do. But I'd recommend and sure we would be working as a very close partner in that process, because we'd be thrilled to throw other questions and ask other things of these municipalities.
I would be pleased to make the motion that the Board of Commissioners authorizes a letter of support for the Benson Conservation District grant application for funding to support the Northwest Michigan Watershed Coalition and authorizes the chair to sign.
Second.
Support.
Evan. Motion and support. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Roloffs.
Yes.
Sauer.
Yes.
Worsakki.
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Janat.
Yes.
Markey.
Yes.
Nye.
Yes.
All righty, thank you. We'll move on to commissioner reports. Actually, I only had a couple meetings. I'll let Tim talk about building and grounds, came in to do APs. And that was it. So not a lot for me this past couple of weeks. Art?
Thank you. Rebecca, Inland Township, hopefully by now has talked to you about getting that resolution signed. All right, I'm turning that responsibility over to Evan. All right, Evan?
They haven't listened to either of us, so we'll see.
I'm telling you, we couldn't be more direct about it, Rebecca. And let that be on the record, by the way. We have at the EDC, we continue to talk about what the future direction is of that. We have now executed the contract with the project manager to lead us through that. He's very talented, as we've already spoken about before. Credentials couldn't be any better to be the one that takes us through that process. You'll hear more about that probably closer to February. I'll let Gary talk about the health department and his role as chair. I love that, Gary. I love being able to refer to you. And at the Community Action Agency, what I want to share with you there is in my report is that we agreed to provide up to $70,000 for a multifamily housing project in Charlevoix. What's relevant about that is we've been able to get 2 different projects funded here in Benzie County. You know, I don't think we, as a commissioners, and as your representative, I don't think we get enough credit to say that we helped fund those, quite frankly. Everybody else is getting recognition, and it's our group that helped move that along. I'm trying not to be too self-serving, but sometimes you have to be. At that meeting also, there was these cards that were handed out, and it says, I want to join the community. And what it is, it's if you would like to participate in the Community Action Agency in any level, feel free to fill out that card. Otherwise, I've been as always, I'm in a number of discussions regarding housing and economic development. Head Start, I'm going to tell you that I think in the next 30 days, we're going to have a great announcement that we can make for this community. I'd open it up to questions.
Gary Cunningham.
Thank you. I need to add, on 21 November, I attended the airport meeting and I think it was covered very well by Brooke. And we've had quite a few conversations in the past, and I'm very pleased with the communication working with Brooke. The other thing I want to mention, and just as something maybe we can use as a commission and the county to leverage, is our WUWU local radio station 100.1 has topics where they will talk about anything local for us. It's very, very grassroots, and I think it works well with communication and us being transparent. They have had various candidates on there. They asked me to come on there and talk about the master plan a little bit, but it's something that we have that's grassroots. And I know we're really focusing on education for us, and that might be another avenue for us. And other than that, unless you have some questions.
Got it on here, the event that you missed.
Oh.
Just saying.
I had it on there and then didn't go. Yeah.
Any questions? Rhonda?
Thank you. I attended the Village of Beulah. Don Olney, the clerk, and Margaret Loom, the treasurer, are retiring. The new clerk and treasurer were in attendance and were introduced. The board took action to dissolve Beulah's Downtown Development Authority. Two trustees, Phil Downs and Deanne Lull, will be retiring from the Beulah board, which will form openings.
Yeah.
They approved their seasonal RV park rules, and their Christmas magic festivities will be December 8th in downtown Beulah. Discussed building and grounds a little bit. We also went over the parking lot lighting and striping updates, and then we had a lengthy discussion about the maintenance position. There were a couple of candidates that are no longer options, I believe.
Correct.
Is accurate. Benzonia Township reported there's a new deputy treasurer selected. Jason Bernard said that there was a commercial storage structure land use submitted for McDonald Road and M115. The West Benzie Joint Planning Commission has recommended adoption of the Crystal Lake Watershed Overlay. The website contract was approved with Garrison Digital Solutions for the township for not to exceed $12,000. And there was a motion to add Lisa Vogler, attorney at law, to the building committee, which failed 4-1. Centra Wellness Board met. Johnston talked about there are 5 PIHPs who have redlined their contract with the state and signed it. These are over issues with the Wasco settlement, internal savings percentages, and CCBHC issues. Northern Lakes forensic audit is ongoing, and there is potential for state fund clawback of monies for counties. And then Sheriff Brian Gutowski submitted his resignation from the board due to conflicting meetings. I want to add on that point, it was really an asset to have the Sheriff of Manistee on our community mental health board. There were he gave a lot of insights. He was a valuable person. It almost made it kind of created an opening, and Commissioner Markey and I have talked about how valuable it would be for law enforcement to serve in those positions when they become open, just to create a connection on that level. So we might
Or
want
even
to,
just liaison.
or liaison, yeah.
Participate.
Right. And then finally, my MAC Health and Human Services, we actually had a presentation from Bear River Health Youth Outreach. The former Kirkland College campus in Roscommon is going to become a non-secure juvenile detention facility to serve all 83 counties. It was purchased privately, but it's going to be run nonprofit. The residents, which the first phase will be 96 young men, and then they will phase into about 400 occupants, will fall under the new child care juvenile justice cost split, which is the county 25% and the state 75%. This is a pretty exciting development. We all know we need beds for childcare, and MAC actually forwarded the presentation, Katie, if you'd like to see it, what they're proposing. But this is, and because this is, Kirkland College walked away from this campus in pristine condition. And so they're saying they're going to be able to get this up and running for 1/10 of what it would have cost to build a facility. So it was pretty exciting.
Just to clarify for the public, we're talking about juvenile childcare,
Juvenile child
not
care.
just
And this is
daycares.
not secure. This
Just
isn't,
being,
this is level 1.
yes.
Say
So
what the capacity was, Rhonda?
they're gonna start at 96. But they will have maximum capacity of over 400.
Wow.
And they're
But
talking,
they have to, they're very restricted as to buckets. You can't, out sight and hearing separation between, and the different funding buckets too will determine who they can serve.
Yep.
So, and then just the things we talked about here, the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund and HB House Bill 4688, mandatory staffing, which is not supported by MAC in Sheriff's Department, right? And the jail. Yeah. So they discussed that. That's all I have.
Questions?
Yes, just have one. Was anything mentioned about the Crystal Lake watershed lawsuit against Benzie and
Not in
Benzonia
any,
Benzonia
I think
Township?
it came out after.
Afterwards?
after the
Okay, I
meeting.
just-
I do have the printout of the filing that has been on social media. Crystal Lake Watershed has named, I believe, Jason Barnard and Sunkist Hills
Mhm.
As defendants in a lawsuit.
Yeah, not
And-
against the county.
Oh, it was
No.
the press release that I saw. and I
Right,
just
right.
wondered if they.
Yeah, that
But
it
that
was
was
not, it
afterwards?
came out after the meeting I attended.
I got some stuff about the Bear River Health, because they did the presentation at my MAC
Hmm.
meeting too. And, my, committee, we have prosecuting attorneys and judges there, which that discussion was very lengthy. And, they're gonna have a challenge because they're looking for kiddos that are not court ordered.
Yep.
Now, and then there comes a funding piece of that, which if the court's not ordering it, then there's no longer that requirement for the 75-25 split.
Right.
They said it would fall under it for here, but I'm sure there's
Yeah.
nuances that have to be figured out. But they did state in my meeting, these kiddos won't be there because they have to be. They're there because they want to be. It's non-secure.
Exactly right. That's where some of the stipulation came in. And you're right, there's the separation of sight and sound depending on what kind of buckets these kids are coming from, right? I mean, if court ordered versus
Court
foster
recommended.
homes
Right.
versus other things. Now, they're also talking about having a educational component to this, a very like a technical trade skill schools as well. I mean, it's already in place, which is the Kirkland Community College campus already had that stuff there,
Mhm.
which is fantastic. They're also talking about doing housing for their employees.
Yeah, workforce housing.
So I mean, that's already there too. I mean, very exciting.
Yeah.
And 400 beds, I mean, I think right in Michigan now, they have that they physically can use less than 200. So
I know, but if
And
it's
there-
not
the other
court
thing they
ordered, I
said is-
mean, most
Right.
of those kids are court ordered though, that we need beds
this is
for.
where so I asked them if they talked to any of the CMHs or the regions to get their input and how to help with this, because they're talking about substance use abuse kiddos too, I mean, in here. And no, they haven't. So that, I'm excited. I'm
Yeah.
really hoping that it can work out and work well. They just have some hurdles to.
And the other thing they noted was right now, the cost to send these kids out of state is about $600 per day. Their
Mhm.
price point coming in to house their per diem is going to be $200 to $250.
That's even cheaper than
Yeah.
Ottawa and Calhoun, which we have contracts with.
Yeah, so no,
Is
great things come. Hopefully it works well.
Is there a duration at how long these students or children?
We got into that discussion too. They're
Okay.
saying 3 months, like 3-month programs.
Hmm.
I'm thinking if they're going through one of these trade classes, that's
Yeah.
probably gonna be more than 3 months.
Mhm.
I was
But they're talking, they have like an industrial kitchen, so like a cooking and like a classes like hotel and kind of stuff like that.
hospitality.
Hospitality, that's the word I was looking for. They have like an auto body shop already there. So talking carpentry, electrical. I mean, these are all these things that are having potentially in play,
Mhm.
which is fantastic. So I was real excited to have that presentation. Just have some challenge.
I have a couple questions on it, but it sounds like there's a lot to be worked out yet.
I did pretty good notes. If you want to ask, I'll tell you what I know.
Well, I don't need to know it in detail. I'm not running it. But is that at Kirkland College, you said?
In Roscommon,
In Roscommon? And is that fair
which
to,
is
Yeah.
here.
It's a 200-acre campus.
I know where Roscommon
Yeah,
is.
he goes there monthly.
And is it inappropriate to call it a youth center or detention center? What are
It's
they referring? to?
Juvenile Youth Detention Facility.
Okay, all right. And
Was it
when you were
because
giving your
there's
report
no
regarding
monitoring?
central wellness, you used the expression, the acronym PIHP. What is that?
Prepaid, inpatient,
Pre-hospital inpatient.
hospital.
Their
They have so
their
many
acronyms is crazy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Prepaid
all right.
inpatient health.
Plan.
health plan.
Close enough. I
Yeah.
just,
there you go.
and you guys are both using the expression kiddos. Is that a slang term or is that an acronym for something?
So.
I call my kids kiddos all the time.
Kiddo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
kiddo.
right.
I
haven't heard that expression once.
Presentation, class meeting that I wasn't here for from Central Wellness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She uses that phrase a lot.
Did
Sarah
you?
May? Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, Sarah
she does.
Garthy.
I just find it
That's good.
interesting they refer to it as a detention center when you're saying there's no
Well, it's
monitoring
they
and
don't lock
non-secure.
down.
Okay,
Like the kids. So it is, they're being detained there, but it's not a lockdown facility.
interesting. Okay.
What I'll be following is how do they fund it? I want to be most curious about, because especially if some of it's volunteer.
It's, I think 98% is gonna be Medicaid.
Wow.
In fact, they set a percentage, if I refer to my notes, but it's Medicaid payments, private insurance. And then counties, I'm sure they're gonna be talking to counties. I mean, that's one of the
Well, so
hurdles they have to
that's where the
cross.
challenge comes in.
Yeah.
It's like,
Back up.
I'm not seeing where the counties, unless it's
Right.
court ordered, counties are not gonna pay for it because the courts are telling us we have to.
Right.
And that's where, and they're not gonna be taking the court ordered ones because they're not secured.
Mhm.
And the phrase detention, youth detention or detention,
Implies secure.
they might be removing that because of the conversation during my MAC committee meeting that I was at.
Sure. Yeah, I get that.
They are applying for an 856,000 DHS grant. Gonna be a $30 million overall project. It'll have workforce housing. Yeah, says first 96 will depend on where the funding comes from. This will fall under childcare, juvenile justice split of county 25, state 75. I mean, they said that. Maybe they'll find that that's not accurate, but at this point, they are saying that in the presentation they're giving.
Interesting.
Anybody else? Jim?
Friends of Point Betsy Lighthouse, working on closing out the year. The gift shop had a record year with a total of 213,000 this year in sales, which is 28,000 more than last year. And last year was a record year. They actually did like a fall open house that went over really well. It generated like almost like, I don't have my notes, but it was like $2,200 just in the one day. A fall open house. A lot of people just were there anyways, doing the fall color tours, stopped in and, oh, you guys are open today. So they're probably gonna be doing that every year now, or at least in the near future. I attended the Judiciary and Public Safety MAC committee meeting, and we've already covered that rather extensively. One of the things that I want to talk about, that we did talk about in depth as well, is the minimum staffing that is being proposed. It's heavily being supported by unions and not just law enforcement. This is for fire and EMS as well. That could affect Benzie County greatly. And it's more of a big city, we have lots of people kind of thing pushing this, without any consideration of the challenges and limitations that the rural first responders have. And unfortunately, because the way it's set up, it's probably will get pushed through and passed before the year's end, before the dynamics change in Lansing. I'm not a big proponent of the state telling us what the minimum staffing is for these agencies, because quite frankly, as we already see, EMS and dispatch here are already having challenges finding qualified applicants. So what, if they say, oh, you got to have this minimum staffing, well, we already are having issues with neighboring agencies upping their wages just to try to steal employees so they can cover their staffing shortage. So I think it's going to get a lot worse if they try to get this through.
I know they have the courts doing time studies be in preparation for this as well. So that would determine what the staffing is in courts based on time studies. And then last I had heard dispatch wasn't included in this.
Well, maybe
But is
not
it now?
dispatch. No,
I wonder.
I'm just saying, just using dispatch as an example, as in we're having a hard time hiring.
Right.
And then neighboring agencies keep
Mhm.
And we've seen that with paramedics too, and EMT.
And it was also stressed the impact that's gonna have on overtime if it is implemented just
Oh, yeah.
through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that they want to make sure that the responders are safe, but we don't have the staffing pool to select from.
No.
I attended the I won't use acronyms for you, Art. The Northern Michigan Regional Entity Substance Use Disorder Oversight Committee.
That
meeting.
is a long time.
There was one Benzie Manistee grant request, and that was for SafeNet. I do believe Sarah from Central Wellness did cover that in her presentation a bit. This was a while ago. And Benzie County's portion is about 23,000 and Manistee's portion is about 32,000. SafeNet is in the schools. And the SUD board did approve this to get approved at the full NMRE board. Tenant buildings and grounds, which we did cover, and Rhonda did fill in a little bit more information. Benzie Senior Resources, which, you know, Doug Duran covered rather well. That's all I have.
Great, thanks. Questions?
Just a comment, Tim, when you're talking about the minimum staffing, I think it's good that we have professionals that give us guidelines. I, like you, am uncomfortable being dictated to, but I think that those guidelines are helpful.
Agreed. I mean, so it's good and bad. Some of the things, guidelines, like the city of Detroit, Lansing. I mean, I'm going to use firefighting because I'm very familiar with that. Those guys are great at what they do. And the unions are fantastic and support the firefighters there. Awesome. But fighting a fire in Detroit is a lot different than here in Benzie County. They have a different water supply system than we do. They have high rises. They have, you know, hydrants all over the place. They have a lot more commercial structure. So the requirements for them and how they fight fires, and they go out on fire calls daily. Frequently structure fire. I may get 10 in a year. That's a high number for my department, right? I mean, training requirements and staffing levels. I'm a volunteer department. I mean, how do I staff that?
I get everything you're saying. It's typical. It's a different environment north of Grand Rapids, but we seem to all get treated the same. One day, maybe Lansing will learn that they're to distinguish the difference.
I would hope so.
At all, Evan?
So let's see, I want to thank Art and Rhonda for covering the knee surgery last week. So I missed a few meetings, but Art will never forgive me, but he did cover me on one and Rhonda did as well.
Nothing a good bottle of whiskey would take care of.
Let's see, other than that, Colfax Township, they discussed their capital improvement plan. And they did send the hazardous mitigation, I think, finally, right, Rebecca? Okay. Benzie Bus is going to be having a workshop to update their values and mission statements. And they also approved a code of conduct policy. And then the Conservation District had their annual meeting, but John is here and covered that with the annual report. And so that is all I have.
Questions for Evan?
Maybe I'll split a bottle with you. Not the whole thing.
Commissioner Sauer?
Gonna start drinking here. Okay.
Is that an option?
No, it's fine. I went to a couple of my townships. Gilmore Township is now taking credit card for property taxes. Hope it works out well for them. Road Commission. A lot of discussion on the bond wage issue that did not pass. They're got Katie coming and Bobby coming back to talk about it. Give me the 19th, I believe, of December. They feel it was so close that I'd like to go again, but I have concerns, and I know Katie has, about spending money on off-year election. See where it goes from there. Local road committee will meet on the 16th December, and we'll decide basically the township supervisors decide what projects we'd like to have, and at the recommendation of the road commission. Been a great thing, done a lot of roads that would have never got taken care of, so I'm always supportive of that. Betsy Valley Trail. Had a couple of issues with property owners that wanted access to the trail, to access their property, which was in the Crystal Lake segment. We approved it anyway. And we also would like to set up a committee about trail etiquette. Seems to be a huge problem with
Etiquette.
etiquette. Yeah, we'll go on, we'll leave it from there. So we're trying to get 2 members from Clipra, 2 members from the Friends, and 2 members from the Betsy Valley Trail Management Council. Sit down. What can we do? We're also in the trying to discuss it with the Tart Trail, what they do. Coming up on your right or left. Just common courtesy. Geez, I don't know why it's so hard that we have to talk about it, but it shouldn't be an issue. And as always, Art stuck me with the health department. The health officer actually took the reins yesterday. That's today, 6th. So Dan's on board. I think I expect a lot of good things. I think Art does too. We threw a lot at him at the last meeting, but basically that micromanaging crap better go out the window. Anyway, just suggestions. He's very receptive, so that's good. They also will be looking at beds on the 11th of December for the resource center, the remodel. And that money is coming from the state. Got the name of the grant that covers the cost of the remodel. It can only be used for remodeling the building. So that's coming. We talked about a retirement of a 33-year employee. Been doing vision and hearing screening over the years in the school, so he's gonna be missed. Maples occupancy is at 98.06. It's huge. They're at that point in time, they had 76 residents with 2 planned admission. We're pushing that 78 again. That's great. Village of Alberta. You can read all this. Anyway, we went back to a clerk treasurer position. Not clerk treasurer is one person, but separate. And these 2 new folks, Rachel and Jan, are going to be taking those positions, and they actually came up with a billing service clerk, and that's going to be John Ottinger. And guess with building for the sewer and water is quite a it's a part-time job for him. Last thing, I was going to turn it over to Art, but I'm always in the end here, was the grand opening of Home Stretch over there in Frankfurt. Thought it was well attended, very impressive. Buildings are nice. They're not done, but I'm ready for them to move on to Thompsonville and get started over there. So they're very nice, and they're very efficient. Place is heated by one little heater in the basement or the first floor. All the walls are foam sectional things. I think the longest was like 16 feet. And the floor is sectional. So basically comes insulated. It's very quiet.
Like Legos?
Lincoln
I don't
Logs.
know how yeah, I guess so. I guess you put them together now.
Lincoln Logs.
Yeah, but they're very impressive. I had a good discussion with the guy that basically in charge of the building, and I said, good, I'm ready to move you to Thompsonville. So anyway, that's about all I have.
Good. Questions?
I would just like to add that the construction of those buildings really are quite satisfactory. They've been able to keep their cost per foot down compared to what most of these projects are experiencing. So yeah, John Stimson is doing a great job for us. and there's a lot of demand for him around the region.
Mhm.
And I know that when people approach me and they say, how's John doing for you? I said, I wouldn't do one more project with him. We want to keep him here. Gary, regarding Maples, I think what's equally as impressive in how they've changed that business model is high percentage of those people now are from Benzie County.
Yeah, staying in the 82%. Yeah, so.
And I just want to acknowledge, Gary, I've been on the health department board for just a year now. And Gary, you've done a great job in your leadership role there. I appreciate that.
Not to screw up. We are losing one member from Leelanau County. Dr. Conley, she's now a supervisor, I guess. And
Tim?
On the road commission, in regards to their bond failing, has they reached out to any public and asked why?
when they were checking over the numbers, one of the biggest areas that was against them was Homestead. And somebody's one reason.
The built school?
Was in the
Yes.
school, and don't know how you overcome that.
I just didn't know if they actually, looking at the numbers is one thing, but actually talking to public. They may want to have a campaign where they actually reach out and talk to people and trying to find out why.
This is my opinion, period. Leave it at that. I felt that the open house was too late. People had already voted. They did not go out and press the townships. I felt that they needed to, but that's their call now.
Yep.
Hopefully things will change.
Good deal. Katie?
I'll keep it really short. Jackie and I will be coming forward in the near future, probably in January, with an exciting opportunity to invest in our staff regarding mental health and just supporting our staff in general. So it's called Brain Health. The folks that went to MAC heard about it. And so we'll be coming forward to you in January with a bunch of more information regarding that, as well as what it will cost. We were blown away that it wasn't as expensive as we thought it may be. I'm not going to say it's cheap. It's not as cheap as EAP, but it was very reasonable for what they provide. So very exciting. Just wanted to get you on the edge about that. As a reminder, the opioid RFP is due December 11th. We've received 0 official requests from the community at this point. I've had some conversations and rumblings and talkings with Central Wellness and internal staff about ways to use that money, but nothing official has come from the community. So spread that word. Regional MMP, Regional Materials Management, we had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago. We are going to keep with the rhythm of meeting the second Friday of each month at 1 p.m. and we're going to rotate counties. So the next meeting will be in Leelanau, and then the January meeting will be here in Benzie County. Those are also being video recorded, and we do have a link on our website to view those prior meetings for the materials management planning. At the next meeting, you'll also be asked to consider the regional bylaws for that committee. The bylaws have been reviewed by legal counsel, which we share legal counsel with Leelanau and Grand Traverse. We all use Cole Stoker. And so you'll be asked to approve those bylaws for that regional committee. But second Friday of the month at 1 p.m., those are open to the public. Their public meetings are held to the same standards of OMA as the rest of us. Just as a reminder, there's a housing discussion that's going to take place on December 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Frankfurt Elementary School. Housing North and Ryan Kilpatrick of Flywheel are putting this on, and it's to just really discuss housing in Benzie County. It's a community event, so please attend if you're able. I did put the Central Wellness Annual Report on your desk, so that's just for your FYI. Art covered EDC, but we are working with Steve Arwood to put together a list of stakeholders in the community, working on a rough draft of a letter to distribute to those stakeholders to really just have conversations with them and ask questions of them about, what's going on in their realm of the world, what they want to see in Benzie County when it relates to EDC and the growth of EDC in Benzie County. So trying to take somewhat of a holistic approach of the county and meeting all the sectors of the county, agriculture, tourism, all those different things. And so that's happening. And in the coming months, you'll probably see something coming forward. The last one is I just wanted to kind of put the board on notice, but the animal shelter did have an inspection by the state. And there are quite a few things that we need to do. We need to get started on those things rather quickly. It does look like it's going to cost quite a bit of money. Kyle can go into a bit more detail about some of the needs. They are items we've had on our capital list. They've just been pushed out because of funding issues. But we are going to reach out to the Animal Welfare League to see if there's any partnership opportunities there. We may reach out to the community in general for some of these things. But the inspection is saying there are things that must be done or there's issues. So if there's questions regarding the animal shelter, Kyle can answer those, the detailed questions regarding it. Our outdoor space is beautiful and they're very happy that we did that outdoor space and now things are coming inside and indoor spaces do need to be rehabbed. So
We've already been talking about some of the stuff.
we've been talking about some of those things, but now it's to the point where the state's like, you need to get this done. And so we are reaching out to the Animal Welfare League to see if there's any partnership or opportunities there, as well as others. I'm being told that Cherryland Humane Society is kicking the counties out. So Grand Traverse is exploring building an animal shelter. So maybe there's a regional partnership opportunity there for animal shelters. I don't know. Obviously, we want to keep what we have here in Benzie County because people really support that endeavor. But they're all conversations that we need to have. So as we look into the future regarding animal shelters. I don't have anything else unless there's questions or questions for Kyle.
Have a ballpark figure, is the cost you're looking at? No.
No, I really honestly, I don't. We have to, the ceiling's gotta be tore out. The walls either have to be repainted or completely start with something different. I know we discussed at one point tearing all those divider walls and putting in all new, like,
Kennels.
section kennels and whatnot. I guess it'd be a matter of if we want to Band-Aid it or if we want to
Really
do it
fix
to where we don't have to fix anything for the next 15, 20 years. So ballpark, no, I don't have a ballpark for you.
Triggered the inspect, just a normal inspection.
It's a yearly inspection. They just show up on a random day and.
Seems kind of odd that all of a sudden everything hit the fan this year.
Well, no.
It didn't. No, over the last, they, every year we always have something to do, whether it's painting, whether it's fixing a gate, it's just minimal things. Last year when they showed up, it was the yard. They had questions about the kennel, but I had to explain to them that we're working on the yard and that's going to take a big chunk of money, big chunk of time. There really wasn't too much focus. It was touched upon, but since we were already working on one big project, they couldn't stretch us thin. Now that we're done with that project, they're like, we need to move on to the next step, and that's to get this stuff.
And we've talked about this. You'll recall we had put together an ad hoc to talk about some of the future with EMS and animal control and recycling in Benzie County. And we talked about the need for a third EMS station at some point, the need to fix station in Frankfurt, the need for the future things for animal control and all those things. And we talked about that. So these things we've known about, but they haven't been the state's priority to tell us to do them until now, because we ticked off the other projects that they wanted to see done. So now they're like, okay, well, you did these things. Now this must be done.
Do we have a time frame that we're?
He's given us 6 months, and he said if we need more time, just let him know. Obviously, it's gonna be a big project. Some of the things down there that can be done, I can do myself as far as like the ceiling, the painting of the ceiling, that type of stuff. There's other projects that would kind of go along with that I personally can't do. But
remove
the ceiling, right? So a lot of it I can already get started doing, but once I get started, we're gonna start stepping into boundaries where I'm not gonna be able to do them, and we're gonna have to complete them right away. But as of right now, it's a 6-month thing. He said if we need more time, just let him know. As long as we're progressing toward getting stuff done, just like when we were doing the yard, the putting the fence up took longer, putting the retaining wall took longer, doing the water took longer. So they're aware of that. They're aware that funding is also the issue as well. So we just need to, be open and straightforward with them, let them know what we're doing and make sure that we're actually moving forward with the project.
Carol, I know the question's already been asked once, but are we talking six figures, do you think?
I guess I know which I'm working on a quote right now, several quotes from vendors who do these partition kennels. Those range anywhere between $45,000 and $50,000 to input. The benefit of those is we don't have to ever redo anything with them. If a part fails, depending on how long it is into the warranty, replace it. So that's going to be the big chunk of doing that. The other small portions and pieces would be if we were to tear out those partition brick walls that are in there right now, just redoing those parts of the floor. The ceiling really isn't all that big of a deal. It's taking it off the wall and putting in new lighting. Those little pieces and parts there for water. Would I say six figures? Probably not, but our big chunk would be if we were to move ahead with the standalone kennels or those partition kennels, that's going to be the big chunk.
So high five figure anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
My question for Katie would be, when can we expect our updated at a glance for the new fiscal year?
So Rose never got started on them. So like I had hoped. And so Stephanie and I are going to be working together on that here very, very soon, to try to get those done. It shouldn't take terribly long because it's a lot of the same data that we have to get from the staff. So the first of the year would be my goal because of onboarding and such. Sorry.
No, that's good.
No, but it is a
Just
good,
want- I want a time frame. It's a
Yeah.
good tool. The community
It is
looks
a very-
forward.
I
to
thought
seeing
that
these.
they were started and then they weren't, so we'll get there.
Anything else?
I have these letters, so don't run.
Get your pens out.
Correspondence, anything, anybody? About our final public input, anybody like to speak? Close public input and look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Oh,